Yes. Hello, my beautiful friends, and welcome back. I hope that your birthday of America week is going so beautifully well. We're very glad to have you here and with us. We've got a tremendous live stream planned ahead, and I don't know if you can hear it, but there are jets flying overhead in the background. That's what that noise is. They're doing loop-de-loos right outside up high in the sky. So you may be hearing that throughout the stream. Literally fighter jets moseying on about here in Washington, D.C. But we've got a tremendous live stream planned ahead. Bunch of business to attend to. We've got some updates on the birth tourism response. We know the Supreme Court gave us a dreadful decision that was handed down, but that doesn't mean that we're out of options. We've got some response from Texas. We've got the DOJ taking some action, and some other avenues of closing down and plugging the holes in the boat are also underway. We've got TPS updates on various different countries, 7 of them, that looks like they are now trying to incorporate the new Supreme Court ruling on that other case, which was a good one. Then we've got updates on the Trump election order battle. We know that there were 2 judges, Judge Sparkle Suknanan, the foreign-born dual citizen judge from Trinidad and Tobago, and also the Obama judge, Irwana Talwani. She and both of them have now got hit with an appeal from the DOJ. So those are going to be working their way up through the Court of Appeals. We've got the documents here demanding a stay at the lower courts. And so we'll go through those to see what we can do to fortify our elections. Then other election news out of Arizona, and a very interesting post from the county recorder down there saying that they actually did do a little audit, an analysis of how many illegal aliens were voting in elections. And the number is dispositive. And so we'll take a look at exactly what's going on in there. Some very interesting posts about just how bad the software is and how poorly the list maintenance is being conducted. And some updates in Georgia, another very important swing state, and a new report that the DOJ, the FBI, is surging agents in to shore this up. Then at the end, we'll get the latest on the backdoor judge, Judge Dugan. She is going to be scheduled for sentencing next week on July 8th, and we've got the sentencing memoranda that dropped. She's asking for a very lenient sentence. We'll see what the DOJ is asking for in their sentencing memo, and it's going to be a beautiful stream. And if you're a membo, stick around. We'll have an after party today after the show to hear from you and to see what else you have to say about this, and it's going to be a beautiful day. So we've got an event tonight, which is why we're a little bit early here. We're trying to engage and participate in a lot of the July 4th activities and celebrations, and so we're glad that you're here. Thanks for joining us a smidge early on the day. But looks like we're connected all across the fruited plains of America on this beautiful week ahead, and so that means we can go ahead and get started. And can you hear those jets out there? They just started like 5 minutes ago. They're just doing loop-de-loos. So we're going to continue to enjoy that. Every time you hear that sound, just think of freedom, baby, of American firepower up in the air. So hopefully you can check that out. If you hear that, let me know, because it's pretty loud out here. And it's some of the coolest stuff that I've ever seen, actually. We were out at the fair, and we saw the B-2 stealth bombers fly over our head. And my beautiful wife, Alexis, and I, we both looked at each other like, holy moly. That was amazing. So we've got some updates today. Let's get right to it without any further ado. Starting right now. The DOJ and the states are firing back against the birth tourism scam. We know the Supreme Court said anybody from anywhere, anytime, all at once can come here, drop a baby off, and boom, that baby is a citizen. Thank you, John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett. And the DOJ is now prioritizing the criminal prosecutions of birth tourism frauds and scams. And they released this memo, which we did go through in depth in a prior video, but if you missed it, it is good. It's saying, hey, we investigate a lot of crimes in general, but now we're going to focus on birth tourism. And they gave us a couple of examples in this memo that they did release. Same day that the birth tourism order came down, the birthright citizenship decision from SCOTUS, and they reminded us that they've already prosecuted people. And now the states are also saying we need special sessions. And we've also got a lawsuit from Bill Paxton out of Texas, the Texas AG, who is suing these entities from inside the state. And so you can see a federal response and a state response. We'll get to it all. But remember, in 24, the DOJ prosecuted these two people, Wei Yu Lu and Jing Dong. They got 41 months in prison for funding and operating USA Happy Baby, Inc., which is a happy Chinese baby, presumably. They would help people get fraudulent visas. They would assist customers to come on in here, and then they would hide their pregnancies from immigration authorities. So they would exploit the law, come in, can't do that, all fraud, and they went to jail. Similarly, in 2022, we got Ibrahim Aksakal, 27 months in prison. He was in New York, and he was hosting both birth tourism entities in the Turkish language, and they would also bring people in to hide their pregnancies from immigration authorities. He's also having to pay $1 million in restitution and another forfeiture of $400,000. These are huge operations. And so the DOJ now at the federal level is saying, we're going to start to investigate these even harder. If you're soliciting and you're selling these criminal services, now you're on notice. Some crimes that they articulate for us are wire fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering and conspiracy, unlawful use of means of identification, aggravated identity theft, conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud, and more, saying the DOJ will zealously protect the sanctity of United States citizenship if the Supreme Court won't. If they want to conflate the 14th Amendment, which was for the freed slaves, with invaders from foreign countries who have no loyalty or allegiance to the country at all. Remember, the Native Americans, the Indians, they didn't get birthright citizenship, and they were here. They were arguably more American than some Chinese national flying in. So that has all been dropped, and we'll come back to that because they're surging across the board. But we also saw that one local representative in Texas, this guy called Brian Harrison, he's a state representative and a father of four and a small business owner. And he's over there in Texas and he says, listen, I'm demanding a special session to make it a felony to engage in birth tourism in Texas. We have to stop issuing birth certificates to non-citizens, and even more after what SCOTUS did to us, saying Texans deserve justice, not just rhetoric, and we need it from our state leaders. If the feds won't do it, if the Supreme Court won't honor the Constitution, then we need to respond accordingly. So we need to start acting like a sovereign state. Stop taking it on the chin when actions from D.C. threaten to destroy the very fabric of our republic. Texas must not simply act like a powerless bystander, but we need to take bold and decisive action to protect liberty for future generations. So I am publicly demanding an immediate special session to combat the harms from mass birth tourism, pressure the federal government to fix birth tourism, and to protect the value of citizenship that countless paid the ultimate price for. And they didn't do it so that foreigners could come in here and wave their foreign flags around and then get all the benefits of citizenship with babies that are presumably going to be more loyal to their home countries because of their parents. Now, I hope every elected Republican in Texas joins my call for immediate action. Delay is unacceptable for us, so we should immediately do the following things. 1, make it a felony to operate or participate in birth tourism within our borders. Charge them with crimes. And expand the criminal offense of illegal entry to include entering for the purposes of birth tourism. And in fact, stop issuing birth certificates to children of non-citizens. If the Supreme Court and Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts, if they want to go up there and write their own birth certificates for all these babies, they can do that. But why does a state have to do that? We have a system of federalism. We've got a federal government and a variety of state governments on purpose. And if the feds become oppressive or undermine the rights of the citizens, the states can do something about it. So just say, well, I guess you're a U.S. American citizen, but you're not in Texas. We're not going to give you any of the same benefits here. Also, give the AG the authority to investigate and prosecute birth tourism, ban pre-planned adoption agreements and other gestational surrogacy contracts if any party involved is a citizen or a resident of another country. This is something, by the way, Florida has already done. Also, pass a resolution condemning the Supreme Court in their decision and demand via resolution that Congress take any and all and necessary actions to fix birthright citizenship. And so that came out from this gentleman here, Representative Brian Harrison, demanding a special session. And he was on with Steve Bannon, and he explained this very clearly. Here's what that sounded like.
As constitutional officers of the state of Texas, okay, we deserve our citizenry, the people we serve, the people we work for, more than just rhetoric. And there was a lot of rhetoric, denouncing this abhorrent decision out of the Supreme Court yesterday from elected leaders in Texas. But for crying out loud, Texas is a sovereign state under our Constitution. Hell, we used to be our own republic. And I believe it's about time that Texas starts standing up, not just speaking, saying the right things, but delivering bold actions to protect, the blessings of liberty and the value of citizenship that our forefathers fought and many paid the ultimate price for. So I don't want Texas. I'm sick of Texas just taking it on the chin when republic, destroying decrees come out of Washington, D.C. So yeah, I've announced this morning, I am officially demanding an immediate special session of the Texas legislature to solve this problem. Let's tackle birth tourism head on. I want it to be a state felony to engage in or participate in birth tourism here in the state of Texas. We need to expand our illegal entry laws in the state. It's illegal to come to the state of Texas to engage in criminal enterprise. Let's make birth tourism a crime in the state of Texas. And then, you know what? Birth certificates, last I checked, those are state documents. Why in the world is the state of Texas going to, especially after yesterday, going to continue printing birth certificates from the state of Texas with the state of Texas seal on it and hand them to the children of non-citizens, illegal aliens, possibly foreign, intelligence, national security threats? The state of Texas prints those things. They authorize them. We need to pass a law right now and stop issuing birth certificates to illegal aliens. We need to empower the Attorney General to investigate, give him explicit authority and a mandate to investigate and prosecute birth tourism in the state of Texas. And then let's speak with one united voice. I want us to pass a joint resolution here in the Texas legislature officially condemning what Roberts and Barrett did yesterday at the Supreme Court. Let's let our voice be heard, but more importantly, let's stop taking it on the chin when terrible things coming out of Washington, D.C. Let's stop acting like innocent bystanders. We were elected to be the leaders of the 8th largest economy on earth. It's about time the Texas government starts acting like the sovereign state that the founders of our country intended for states like Texas to be.
Let's go. Yeah, and the border states for a long time have been taking it on the chin. Texas in particular was invaded by the Haitians, all propping themselves up under the bridge. Joe Biden facilitated it, and they were happy to let the invasion occur in Texas because from their perspective, in a couple of generations, Texas will turn blue because there'll be a bunch of illegal alien babies there who are all illegal alien adjacent because their parents are illegals, and they'll vote blue with the Democratic Party to have a pathway to citizenship for all these people. And they'll be fish in a barrel for their cause. Now, the DOJ, of course, is also making this a priority, but there are reports now that ICE is surging in the days after the Supreme Court birthright citizenship decision, saying now 10,000 arrests in 5 days. And that's a lot. That's a big number. Looks like a little bit of extra pep in the step out there. Fox News saying that Homeland says nearly 70% of ICE arrests involve illegal immigrants that were previously charged or convicted of a crime, who now can just plop out babies who'll be citizens here. So arrest them and deport them. The story says that they're ramping this up and it's going to accelerate after the Supreme Court decision. This is one way to handle it. If the boat is being flooded and sinking with water, you got to bail it out. So Fox News Digital got new figures from Homeland on a source saying that more than 10,000 arrests have been made in the last 5 days alone. That is a lot. On Tuesday, SCOTUS, of course, helped to wreck America, upholding birthright citizenship for illegal aliens. A source familiar with these ICE operations, though, said the agency is currently ramping up operations using funds from that one big, beautiful bill to go make it happen. The court cited the 14th Amendment. We read through the whole thing here, and they perverted the meaning of the 14th. Trump saying, we're going to continue to work hard on this. We don't even need an amendment. There are other things that we can do to shore this up. Now, as ICE is seeking to increase arrest, agitators also responding to this, the foreign invading agitators, saying, we demand better living conditions. We want more rights in our federal facilities, and so on and so forth. So based on reporting, they're also finding, according to Fox, that there are secret signal group chats and a number of tax filings and more, saying these are not spontaneous. These are all being funded by American adversaries and ultra leftists, including the Democratic Socialists of America, who want ICE completely eliminated. They don't even want police to be in existence. They don't want borders at all. They want America to just be a dumping ground for the rest of the planet and to eviscerate its national sovereignty. So all of this is happening. And one person from Homeland is saying, nearly 70% of ICE arrests are of illegal aliens charged or convicted of a crime. More than 3 million are already out of the country and counting. And our message is clear. If you come to our country illegally, we will find you, we will arrest you, and we will deport you. And some of the crimes that are now being contemplated, just the news, is doubling down and saying, this is now also in the crosshairs up on Capitol Hill. Homan said, we're stepping up enforcement. Even though we're already doing record enforcement, we're just warming up. We need to buckle down on birth tourism and more. And birth tourism is really just a small sliver of all of the other illegals that are already here and going to be delivering babies who are citizens. So his comment came right after the Supreme Court came down. Simultaneously with all of this, so Texas is working on it, DOJ is working on it. Now we also have the Judiciary Subcommittee. They're also holding a hearing. We saw that yesterday on sanctuary city policies, which are essentially soft secession policies, saying we're going to essentially leave the union. We're not going to follow federal law. We're going to still get federal money, and for some stupid reason, they still get it. But we're also going to be working in opposite directions of the federal government to protect these foreigners who have invaded the nation. Families of victims who were there, the mother of an 18-year-old, Sheridan Gorman, who was killed allegedly by a Venezuelan national without legal status. And they always say, well, Americans commit crimes too. Yeah, we know. That's why we don't want to import a bunch of additional criminals or even non-criminals, because we've got our own problems to deal with. So Mike Lawler was duking it out with Jamie Raskin. And Mike Lawler, I don't think that he's a real purveyor. He was very happy with the 14th Amendment decision. So then he comes out the next day and he starts to duke it out about sanctuary cities. It's like, Mike, hello. We already saw what you posted on X. You already said that you're in favor of birthright citizenship. You're all for illegal aliens. You're also in favor of the Dignidad Act. And then Maria Salazar, who is the Ilhan Omar of the right, just a different ethnicity and a different constituency, she posted another message in Spanish where she says, this is great. Birthright citizenship is a beautiful thing. God bless America. For all of the people who are coming in here without lawful right to have a baby here, well, now they do. She's in favor of it. So we've got a lot of that going on in the right inside our own party. But here's some numbers. According to a Boston Globe investigation, 30% of 323 criminal aliens released in New England between 2008 and 2012 committed new crimes, including rape, robbery, and murder. And the recidivism rate was determined to be much higher than what ICE and the Obama administration had even reported. Okay, so they commit a crime, they are prosecuted, justice is delivered, and then they do it again over and over and over. And since then, in Texas alone, from 2011 to May 26, over 335,000 illegal aliens were booked into jails and charged with more than 600,000 criminal offenses in Texas alone. And they can have babies too. So these resulted in over 227,000 convictions, 614 dead, 3,900 sexual assaults, 30,000 assaults, 5,500 burglaries, 29,000 drug convictions, 2,000 robberies, 2,500 weapon convictions. Nice. All imported thanks to Joe Biden and then validated thanks to the Supreme Court. So now we want to know what to do about it. And birthright citizenship should have been an easy, obvious interpretation. You can read Clarence Thomas's 91 pages that just obliterated what John Roberts duped out. So wire fraud, money laundering, we saw the DOJ is accelerating those potential charges, identity theft charges. Many of them vote in elections, as we'll come back to, but they are now surging. Fox News saying 10,000 arrests in 5 days. Those are good numbers. We've got to bump those numbers up, but not bad. And here was Mark Wayne Mullen commenting about this from the podium.
We're seeing our arrest numbers come up. We're seeing our deportation numbers continue to increase. Right now, we're deporting on average over 3,000 individuals. Actually, the average has been for several weeks now, over 3,200 individuals a day. 70% of those individuals we're deporting have outstanding criminal charges on them, or they've already been charged with a felony. 70% of those individuals. 70% of the individuals that are men and women throughout DHS arrest, being ICE, CBP, or one of our other components, 70% of those individuals have pending felony charges or are current felons that shouldn't be on our streets. So when we go after the worst of the worst, which is exactly what we're doing, we're saving lives. This is a
literally
statistic I like to put out, but 50% of the individuals killed in Fairfax County, Virginia, are killed at the hand of an illegal. Matt, we're seeing
50% in Fairfax County killed by an illegal alien, and most of the Democratic Party is in favor of that. It's like a suicidal death cult. In addition to killing babies, they're also like, well, let's just kill them above ground either, also while they're alive, and just have the country filled with illegal aliens who will make that happen for us. So while this is happening, Homeland Security is also now moving forward to end TPS for 7 countries. So the bad news was the birthright citizenship case. The good news was TPS status. Trump canceled it. We had lower level judges canceled via Kristi Noem. Lower level judges came back and said, you're blocked. You can't cancel it. You didn't follow the proper procedures, and illegal aliens have equal protection rights. In this case, they're not actually illegal because we granted them temporary status. That's not temporary at all. Been going on for over a decade in some instances. Now the Supreme Court said the lower courts cannot review these matters. The statute itself precludes that, says no judicial review. The decision goes up to the Secretary of Homeland Security. That's the decision. Otherwise, judges will say, I don't really like that decision. And then you get LGBTQ plus judges like Anna C. Reyes, who was appointed by Joe Biden, first ever in her district, who then says, this is bigotry. This is racism. And I think the policy's bad. Well, you're not the president. You don't run Homeland Security. You don't like the policy. Why don't you go run for office? But they don't do that. Instead, what we're seeing is the slow gobbling up of power via the judiciary, like a gravity, just black hole sucking all of this power in and prohibiting the executive branch from doing their job. Now, Congress is the check on the judiciary. Congress can impeach and remove the judges. Congress has the power of the purse so they could defund these courts. Congress sets the jurisdiction of the courts so they could just eliminate an entire jurisdiction and say, you're gone. But they don't do anything. And Congress really sits around and kind of just twiddles their thumbs. And for multiple generations, ever since FDR and before, they were delegating their powers to the independent agencies. They were saying, we don't even want any responsibility. Let's just create some independent branch of government that can handle all of these things for us. And we'll just sit back and just bitch and moan, over and over and over, and we'll get reelected, and we'll just continually point fingers at each other to wonder and say, I wonder why things aren't getting done here, and just kind of whine and moan. So as Congress recedes and becomes more and more pathetic, the judiciary, which is no longer being checked by Congress, then continues to emerge like this big, disgusting monster, gobbling up more power everywhere we turn. Now, I did pull up some of these orders, and they don't look like hard ends to us, but according to Newsmax, they say they released a series of notices, and these countries are now going to be processed in light of the Supreme Court decision that is canceling out the blocks on the removals. Haiti, Syria, Somalia, Yemen, Ethiopia, Burma, and South Sudan all got new decisions. We saw earlier, Supreme Court in a 6-3 decision said you have to allow Homeland to continue to process these two countries, Haiti and Syria. Lower level courts, issued blocks, right? They said the president can no longer effectuate these things after Kristi Noem made those orders. And so the Supreme Court lifted those orders, said your blocks are inappropriate, lifted them, and now the cases get remanded back down. Okay, so it's not like the Supreme Court said, okay, do it, load up the airplanes. It said the lower court's blocks are now off, and so pass it back down to the lower courts. So Homeland then released all of these updates, and these are officially from their website, USCIS. You see a bunch of these things dropped yesterday on the 1st, saying updates on termination of TPS for Yemen, for Ethiopia, South Sudan, Somalia, Burma, and Syria, and others. And if Ilhan loves Somalia so much, what's she doing here? Why doesn't she go help her country's conditions that she loves so much, such that she changes the flag in Minnesota, and then also repeatedly in Somali, doesn't even say this stuff in English because she's too cowardly to do it, that she loves her home country and she would prefer to return back there, and we're all living on stolen land and so on and so forth. But they don't really want to leave. They want to reclaim, and in their methodology of conquest, seize this part of America in the name of their homeland, because that's what flags are. Okay, flags are a component of conquest. You take over a castle, you remove their flag, and you hoist your own. When the pirates seize your ship, the pirate flag goes up. When they come in here and they're waving around foreign flags, and I don't care what they are, whatever country that are being flown around, that's a sign of conquest. This is America. We shouldn't have any other flags but the American flag. And if you love that flag so much, you should be first on the boat to get out of here. So all of these got dropped. Let me show you what's inside, because it's not exactly unequivocal. But here was one. Let's go to example to Somalia and see what Ilhan and her people are having to deal with. So this one is the latest. The temporary protected status designation of Somalia and related benefits was set to terminate on March 17, 2026. But another judge out of Massachusetts, she said you can't terminate it. And there was some organization called African Communities Together who sue, and they say, we're running the country now. All we need is a friendly judge who's going to help us. And some judge in Massachusetts did that. So they sued Noem, and the judge blocked it, said, nope, Somalians are going to go die in their home country. What? It's so terrible. But now Homeland says that these beneficiaries will keep their status, and their employment authorization and their documentation will remain valid, all of it pursuant to the court order, saying these documents are all valid and extended, but this extension is limited relief. Okay, so it's like, wait a minute, what? We're keeping this all going? But this extension is limited relief until the District of Massachusetts, so that lower level hack judge who says she's in charge, aligns with the Supreme Court decision and the favorable decision in Mullen versus Doe, which is what just got handed down. So we're going to give you a short pause. The court better come back down and validate and confirm what the Supreme Court said and approve our decision without any other judicial review to cancel this. SAVE will verify if an alien has received a TPS approval that has not been withdrawn using all of these forms. And so here's what we see ultimately. The employment authorized through date will be the employment authorization document expiration date. And so the new date is coming down July 10th, 2026, about a week from today. So Homeland says TPS and employment authorization are extended per court order. Please check back regularly for updates. This matter is in active litigation. The status will be dependent on the litigation. And so hopefully the Supreme Court gets all of these courts under their control, because there are a bunch of them. And this is the only one related to Somalia, but it just is the same across the board. Same thing for Yemen. They're saying you're good until July 10th. We're going to give you some time until the court comes back down. And this one is Ethiopia. Another one in Massachusetts, African Communities Together, all suing on that one. Same thing here. Looks like some of these are all just out of Massachusetts. South Sudan. Yeah, so one court case is blocking all of these countries. South Sudan, they also extended to July 10th. Haiti was in a different case. The Haiti was, of course, the subject of the Supreme Court date. So their extension has also gone through July 10th. And then presumably after the fact, they are going to be packing their bags. And so this has been extended forever and on and on and on. But good news on that they are now making their way through the process in order to get this done. Now, while we're trying to get rid of the illegal aliens and foreign invaders who did not care at all about our sovereignty, they came across the border, hand over fist. Joe Biden facilitated it in. Many of them continue to wave their foreign flags and then sue us. We, the people who elected the president to get a handle on this, they sue us. They say, you Americans are violating our rights. After we offered, in some cases, a very nice hand of graciousness. Oh, your whole country just got obliterated with an earthquake, so we'll let you come here. It's temporary. You understand that. You're going to leave at some point. Yes, thank you. We'll leave you. Then we say it's time to go. Then they sue you. They say you're violating our constitutional rights. We're not going anywhere. It's ours now. I'm the pirate now. And so while that's all happening, we still see that, as we've talked about many times here, many of these people have due process premium. So while the Trump administration and Homeland Security under Mullen and previously under Noem were trying to restore territorial integrity to the United States, other people like Tim Walz are literally pardoning convicted child abusers and preventing them from getting deported. And our disgusting majority on the Supreme Court just also said this dude could just meet a nice woman and drop a baby out, and that person will be a citizen. So Tim Walz letting the child grapers go.
New accusations against top officials in sanctuary state Minnesota over protecting an illegal immigrant convicted of repeatedly sexually assaulting a 10-year-old girl. It's a hard story to talk about and to read about, but it happened and we need to tell you. Homeland Security accusing Governor Tim Walz of granting a pardon, effectively just wiping away his criminal record to help shield the man from a final order of deportation.
So Brooke Taylor is on that. She joins us now for more. And Brooke, what did you find out? Good morning.
Hi, Bill. Good morning. Well, Governor Tim Walz facing major backlash for this. So he sits on the board that pardoned this convicted child sex offender as he was just about to be deported. So back in 2006, Tao Lee Vang right here, he was convicted of repeatedly sexually assaulting a 10-year-old girl in Minnesota. He pleaded guilty in a deal that kept him out of prison. DHS says that conviction cost him his legal status and made him deportable. Well, the details in these court.
He didn't go to prison for repeated sexual abuse of a 10-year-old in Minnesota. That is the most insane justice system that you've ever heard. That, in some cases, should be considered a dangerous crime against the children. It should essentially be life in jail. I mean, life in prison. In Minnesota, this dude got released. Probation is the report. That's what we're dealing with.
Documents, they're too graphic for me to repeat to you on air, but it describes the abuse spanning 2 years from the time the victim was 10 to just 12 years old. The girl told investigators she met Vang through her older sister, who he later married. Investigators say he admitted, quote, "I made a mistake, but this is a minor thing. It's a cultural thing in Thailand to marry and have sex with girls as young as 12.
That's why we don't want them here. Go do that crap in Thailand. We don't need that here. Take your culture back to Thailand and, commit demonic, heinous things back there. But we don't need to import it here. But our disgusting elected leaders in Minnesota, which is a state of America, technically for the time being, they're excusing this type of behavior and allowing this dude to go free. This is the point. We do not need to import this type of behavior into the country. It is not in parallel with American values and American cultures. And they just will say, well, that's racist. You're racist against the Thai. No, I'm not. But I don't want this type of behavior. And if this dude is saying that's their culture, we don't need it here. And now he got a pardon for this?
He also told police that the young victim should be arrested too because she was, quote, as much at fault. Now, according to DHS, he received a deportation order after his conviction, but earlier this month, Minnesota's Board of Pardons voted to pardon him. Federal officials say this wipes away his conviction that made him removable and now could help him fight deportation. So the three-member board includes Governor Tim Walz, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, and Chief Justice Natalie Hudson.
How much time have these people and this party spent on the Epstein nonsense? Epstein, Trump's a PDF, blah, blah, blah. They literally pardoned a dude who was R-ing a 10-year-old for years until she's 11, 12, and it's her fault. So they should never be allowed. And the media, I mean, honestly, if they had any integrity at all, they would never let them live this down. Like, this is an abuse of a minor on record that this dude admitted to. Evidence is clear as day, took a guilty plea, confirmed it, excused it, blamed her for it, and they just pardoned him. And then they'll all sit there with a straight face and like lecture Trump about something about Epstein when it's happening right here in Minnesota. And in fact, if you criticize it or condemn it, now you're a bigot. Now you're a xenophobe. Now you're somebody who is racist and gets foreign cultures. All right, you can call us whatever you want. We don't want this behavior in America. So call us all the names you want in the world. But this is enabling the very criticism that they try to lob at the other side, like it's the PDF party, when it's their party who are letting them walk free with probation and pardons.
DHS blasted the decision, saying in part, Governor Tim Walz's decision to pardon an illegal alien convicted child rapist so he can remain in our country is disgusting. This pardon will take away the child rapist's qualifying convictions that made him removable from the United States. Now, we reached out to all three board members, including Governor Walz, to ask why they decided to pardon this convicted child sex offender. We have not heard back, Bill.
And then you hear things like, well, illegal aliens don't vote in elections because they know that it's a crime. And if people know it's a crime, nobody commits a crime, which is interesting because we know that DUIs are crimes. And then we've got a lot of illegal aliens with 10 to 12 DUIs. We know that raping children are crimes, but we've got one who's raping a child and then gets a pardon and it's actually not a crime. So if the crime is endorsed, or in other words, excused, and then they turn around and they say, oh no, they would never do anything bad. They would never vote in an election illegally, and we would find them and we would do something about it. You expect us to believe that you're going to go investigate an election vote, a fraudulent election vote that's in favor of your political party, when you're not even going to prosecute a child rapist and you're going to allow that child rapist to go free with a pardon so that he does not get deported and he continues to remain in your community with his Thai culture? We shouldn't believe it at all. We don't here. But many others on the other side do. And Jake Tapper will probably come out there and say, oh, it's illegal to vote in federal elections. It's also illegal to rape kids there, Jake, but your party is endorsing it. So horrific, horrific behavior. And honestly, it's happening in Minnesota because the people there in Minnesota, and I know there are many good people in Minnesota, aren't outraged about it. They're just sitting there saying, well, Trump's invading our state with a fascist dictatorship, and they're allowing this to continue on. Where's the outrage in Minnesota? There isn't any, because the culture has shifted from an American culture into whatever the hell this is. So as we know, there is going to be an onslaught of additional illegal aliens like this guy dropping babies out, and those babies will be citizens, and then that'll be an anchor to prevent this person from getting deported. And we saw this come up actually before the Supreme Court decision dropped. We had a development from Ken Paxton, and he filed this lawsuit even before the decision came down. And he said, we are now suing these birth tourism centers in Texas to stop this from happening. We've got an invasion of Chinese nationals who are coming into Texas for the sole purpose of giving birth. They have no allegiance to America. They have no residency in America. All they're here to do is to get on the citizenship roll, take it back home, and according to some analysis from guys like Peter Schweizer, there's 1 million of them, or 1.5 million of them, who are Chinese American citizens who are in China being inculcated with their culture, just like this Thai culture, but they're actual citizens, so they can come on back here and get the full benefits of citizenship when they return. So Ken Paxton filed this lawsuit, and he's got some interesting excerpts from it. And he was suing, in this case, Dia Postpartum Care Center as the company, and also suing Lin Suling and Lai Wan Lin Chan. State of Texas versus them. And here's one of the, looks like, advertisements that they're spreading around on whatever social media sites that they're on. In Mandarin, with a phone number, look at these babies with this Chinese lady who comes over here. Oh, I love being in Texas. Look at my baby, an American citizen. Let's go back to China and raise them as little communists and then send them back on over. Here's another one, U.S. DEI Postpartum Care Center. And so Ken Paxton said this, listen, man, for nearly 20 years, these Chinese companies have operated on illegal, dangerous, and dishonest birth tourism business to import Chinese nationals to the United States for the sole purpose of birthing children and obtaining birthright citizenship. To date, the defendants boast that they have facilitated 1,000+ American-born babies. And it's not just happening in Texas, it's happening all over the country. And why wouldn't it accelerate, especially in the blue states? Texas may come crack down on this, but just go to California. They're already happy to have other people come in and live in their sanctuary dumpsters in LA and elsewhere and give them everything. Roll out the red carpet for them, or go to Minnesota. You can rape children and Tim Walz and the Democratic Party will pardon you. But this is not tourism at all, okay? It's trafficking children into the United States to exploit our system. Tourist visas cannot be issued for this purpose. This is an unlawful scheme that perpetrates a fraud on the government and actually violates Texas law. And defendants know this. In fact, just last week, they posted a video on TikTok acknowledging that the federal government is now, quote, strictly policing birth tourism and alerting Chinese women that after applying for pregnancy, if you are applying after pregnancy, can easily lead to a refusal. So what do? To overcome this, these Chinese companies and nationals, and to avoid detection, they recommend that women apply for tourist visas before the pregnancy. Okay, so come in while you're still hot. Now, this violates a bunch of Texas law, Penal Code, Deceptive Trade Practices Act, Public Nuisance, and more. And so now we're suing them. And what do we want? $1 million in non-monetary relief. This is a civil lawsuit, not a criminal complaint. So they say, we're Texas, we are suing. And the company that we're suing is the Dia Postpartum Care Center. It's a general partnership that was formed in Texas. And according to them, they offer services related to birth tourism, prenatal, postpartum care, medical care, bunch of other things, immigration-related services, all so that these foreigners can come in and have their babies be citizens. Now, the center can be served through its general partners. They've got a couple of these people, Lai Wan Li Chan and Lin Suling, a.k.a. Danny. Yeah, Danny. And wherever a general partner may be found, we can sue. So we've got them listed here. She changed her name from Lai Wan Li Chan to Vivian Lin. And Miss Lin is a partner and operator. She says that she's the head nurse of the NICU and the OBGYN group. If you search on the nursing license verification portal, though, for her name, Vivian Lin, she's not on there. She's not a NICU nurse, nor do search results actually return from this other name, Lai Wan Lin Chan. Same results occur when you go into the Texas Medical Board online database, so fake nurses. Miss Lin can also be served at this location, and we're going to do that. This other dude is Lin Suling, goes by the name Danny. And if you search for him in the nursing portal or the Texas Medical Board portal, nothing there. So we're going to serve him too. Now, for decades, we know the 14th Amendment has been incorrectly applied to grant birthright citizenship to any single child who's dropped on the soil. And in turn, this is a misinterpretation. And Ken says, this has demeaned the priceless and the profound gift of American citizenship. It's literally rewarding people for violating our immigration laws and conflating the plight of a Chinese national flying into the country with an American slave after the Civil War, or saying they actually have more rights than the Indians who did not get citizenship, even though they were geographically here and directly interfaced with America because they had an allegiance to their tribe. So they were excluded. But a Chinese national who has an allegiance to China and is not even living here at all gets a baby and passes on citizenship. Wild, wild times. So along this misinterpretation, birth tourism, which is the practice of flying in here, plopping a baby down, and then leaving, has become a sprawling industry, says Ken. Although the practice is not confined to any single nationality, the Chinese have positioned themselves as the largest. And the industry typically houses expectant families. So you come in here in a purpose-built maternity, quote, hotel and other residential properties. And so when they're applying for, visas and things, they use a U.S. residents that are designed to cater to these specific nationalities. And they put them in high immigrant population locations right next to airports where they can come to and fro. Now, although the industry operates mostly underground, in countries like China, organized operators have developed a sophisticated and lucrative commercial industry that engages international networks to provide end-to-end services, including visa coaching and preparation, say this to the border person, travel coordination, housing, medical care, document processing. We'll just do the whole thing for you. Just pay us this big fat fee. Now, depending on the level of services, location, and amenities, birth tourism packages can regularly cost tens of thousands of dollars. But the investment, however, can have a significant upside because once a child age 21 who is a citizen, they can petition for permanent residency for their parents and siblings. So you can't get rid of them either. So marketing for this industry is typically accomplished through social media platforms, private messaging applications, through word of mouth, online Chinese websites, private and state-sponsored firewalls, all blocking access. But this industry is dangerous. It's rife with criminal activity, writes Ken in Texas. U.S. visa fraud can pose a serious and underappreciated medical danger to these kids and moms. In fact, not only do 14-hour flights present known medical dangers and other psychological stressors on the pregnant women, but they're frequently made worse by these housing operations, which also lack any oversight or actual professionals. And when obstetric and neonatal emergencies do happen, these conditions can put families and babies in dire circumstances. Mothers typically lack medical insurance. They're already stretching themselves financially, and they may avoid seeking medical care because they don't want to actually go expose themselves and pay for it. For the Chinese families that seek to utilize this birth tourism, the immigration process is pretty simple. Typically includes completing a form, DS-160, it's certified and subject to perjury, as an application for a tourism visa. You pay the fee, you go to an in-person interview under oath at a U.S. consulate in China, and there a consular officer will assess the purpose and the duration of the visit. Now, as part of the form, they then must disclose the purpose of their travel and whether they've ever sought to obtain or assist another to obtain a visa by fraud or misrepresentation. Now, critically, since January 24, 2020, the U.S. has expressly denied tourist travel to come in and give birth in the United States and has maintained that all birth tourism visa applications will be denied. Now, that's under Trump, right? So that's January 2020. The election happens November 2020. The CIA and Fannie Willis's people all rig it. Joe Biden comes in 2021. Everything changes. The invasion starts unfettered. So here's another ad, an original thumbnail of a TikTok posted. Look at this happy Chinese couple. Wow. Posting this on their TikTok. 20-year maternity care couple team witnessed 1,000+ babies American born. Who are we? Well, we're foreign interests who are essentially criminals who are exploiting America. So they refer to themselves as a full-service luxury birth tourism business for Chinese nationals who want to exploit America for birthright citizenship. The center bills itself as elegant and first class, and we offer an experience that offers prenatal and postnatal care, and we combine the experience and the characteristics of Chinese and American postpartum care. We've got 1,000+ babies born. Defendants' operation began in 2008. They operated a single residential property in Fort Bend. According to an article published by the World Journal at the time, they were doing 5 new babies per day and then had to really ramp it up. Here's a couple of their properties. Sugar Land, Texas, right over here. Houston, Texas, right over here. We've got Rosenberg and Richmond, all in Texas. Just throw the Chinese babies in there and pop out comes the baby and boom, it's a citizen. But in light of the sprawling industry that has developed around this, the center has now increased its capacity. Today, the center operates at least across 4 residential properties, typically hosting multiple families, squeeze them as many as you can in there. And based on the 2009 capacity, the center apparently can handle 20 births per day. The center's primary source of clientele comes from various websites and platforms. One of them is called MyPian, a popular Chinese social media platform, and another one called WeChat, which is like a big social media site, and another one called 51 Fumi Shengzi, which is a Chinese forum that literally translates into going to the US to give birth, 51 Fumi Shengzi. And they also own other websites, mombabycenter.com, texasbabycare.com, and other sources are word of mouth and other referrals. Now, here's a photo of one of the properties that was posted online by them. Like, oh yeah, here, right there. Drop your baby in one of these. At the center, expectant families are promised 24-hour care by experienced nurses, elegant environments, Wi-Fi, Chinese TV, DVD, CD, radio, dressing table, alarm clocks. We have thermos and central air conditioning. So come on in. The center also claims to offer a variety of options for tourism and other expectant families. They advertise a luxury chauffeured black car service across Houston for high-paying guests to purportedly visit a bunch of different locales, including the Spring Blue Bonnets in Texas, the Houston Rodeo, Christmas lights in Houston, and the Louvre Couture exhibit at the Museum of Fine Arts. Wow. Now, as for medical care, she says she's a nurse, and they say that they're licensed. In one online post, they say, no, we're like legitimate. And quote, if you want to experience world-class medical services together with your baby, contact us. And to bolster their ads, the center frequently posts photographs of its clients and the newborn babies. In one post, the center congratulated Mr. and Mr. Zhang from the Chinese province of Anhui. The post states that the couple's daughter contacted Mrs. Lin to give their child one more option for the future. But the services don't end there. From the inception of each new client relationships, they send them back over to WeChat, text, and email. Through those channels, the defendants consult with clients about travel process, personalized immigration strategies, coach the clients on how to navigate this to minimize any legal and immigration scrutiny so that they don't get denied at the border during customs. Now, these private conversations typically involved individualized assessments. Here's one question that they ask. Do I have to buy a return ticket? Will a one-way ticket be refused? Does going to the U.S. to have children with insurance affect the next entry? Entering the U.S., how much cash should you bring to avoid trouble? If I give birth in a red state, can the baby get a U.S. passport? Hopefully in the future, the answer is no. If Maibo doesn't return to China for 2 years, will her identity be canceled? Is it legal for Chinese to go to the U.S. to have children? And they say, we'll explain that directly, a little FAQ. Is it legal for Chinese to go to the U.S. to have children? Many pregnant moms ask in their FAQ, is entering the U.S. earlier always safer? And recommending between 28 to 32 weeks of pregnancy to avoid suspicions by immigration authorities who say you're about to pop. Many pregnant moms are also struggling with this question, they advise. Should they conceal anything when entering the country? Just call us. We'll tell you what to say. What is the difference between American citizenship and a green card? Well, green card is when you really work hard to get lawful permanent status here. You guys are just stealing citizenship. Now, defendants use the captions of these videos to solicit comments and lead them into conversations. One theme that is pervasive throughout the videos and which goes to the core of the business model is the claim that birth tourism and their service can provide an expedient legal process, which is much faster than a green card. They say, oh, it's slow. It's a long process. You got to wait in line and go and get validated and actually show some allegiance to the country before we give it to you. But as the topics demonstrate in their TikTok account, there is one central concern. What is the legal and practical way to get in? We've got this baby coming out. What do I do? To ease these concerns, they then coach them through the visa process, including the preparation of applications and interviews with the consulate in China. They go further too, even assisting in the preparation of the applications and the other paperwork. And once a child is born, they say, we're going to handle everything. We're going to give you all the licenses, all the birth certificates, all the necessary paperwork, travel documents, boom, a social security number. We're going to get them a passport and a birth certificate verification. Good like any other American. Now, to this end, defendants represent themselves as subject matter experts. In fact, defendant Vivian, she says she went to the U.S. twice to give birth, offering themselves as a resource. I figured it out. I'm an expert. I can help you. Now, importantly, they are also aware that U.S. visas are prohibited for birth tourism purposes. Can't do that. In fact, they recently referenced the State Department's prohibition, saying you can't actually come here only for this reason. And in order to avoid this prohibition, the defendants then encourage the women to apply for a visa before becoming pregnant in order to avoid detection. So come in, get pregnant here, saying if you wait until after you're pregnant, it may truly be too late. So come in quick before you're showing and then get pregnant here. And then it's just 9 months. It's pretty quick. The state then incorporates these following facts. They say, now we're suing you. Texas law, a domestic entity can't be committing fraud. And when you're executing a franchise, you got to comply with Texas law. And so what's happening here is that they are tampering with governmental records. If you make a false entry in a record or encourage other people to do that, that's a crime. In this case, they are engaging in a conspiracy to violate the law by helping them and prepare applications that they know are false, falsely claiming tourism as the primary purpose when it isn't. The primary purpose is to plop a baby out. And now they further engage in an unlawful conspiracy by assisting and aiding and abetting all of this. Also, committing unlawful concealment in violation of federal law. Federal law makes it a crime to knowingly conceal, possess, or receive a visa, knowing it was procured by false claims with false statements and material misrepresentations. They did that as well. They induced and encouraged the Chinese nationals to violate federal law by conspiring to get them tourist visas under materially false representations for the sole purpose of coming here and having a baby. So Texas law then defines a combination of these things as a public nuisance, and gang activities, aka organized criminal activity, is also a public nuisance. They're also violating Texas trade practices rules, saying we can come after you if you're committing this offense. If you are doing things to deceive an ignorant, unthinking, and credulous person, and we can hit you with $10,000 in fines for each one of those. Similarly, violations of the commercial code. What you're doing is you're causing confusion and misunderstanding. You say you're offering medical and nursing services. You're not even licensed. You say you've got some legal ability to handle these things. You don't. You can't do obstetrics. You can't do neonatal. And you're also putting out there that you can, and you can't. You're helping them secure tourist visas under false pretenses. So again, another violation of Texas rules. Business commercial code, much the same. Texas business rules, again, causing confusion, misunderstanding, deceptive trade practices, saying that you can help them get a tourism visa when the primary purpose is giving birth, helping secure them legal documents when you can't actually do anything legally, helping them provide medical and nursing services when under Texas rules, you're not even licensed, saying you're qualified when you're not. You can't provide gynecological care. You can't do obstetrics. Vivian is not even qualified. You say you've got 24-hour professional care, but you don't. You can't. Saying you've got certifications from hospitals. You have no relationship with those hospitals. And so on and so forth. You're also advertising world-class medical services, even though you do not have those. So a little bit of false advertising here. You say you work with hospitals. You don't. And so all that being said, now we want an injunction. temporary injunction saying the state has a right to stop this stuff from happening. We've made our claim. We've proved that these people are engaged in a systemic and commercial violation of Texas law. And so they need to be stopped from doing this. And again, this is a civil case, not a criminal complaint, which hopefully will be coming soon. So what we want are civil penalties in the favor of the state, $10,000 per violation, an injunction to stop them from operating this business, forfeiture of all of their rights and privileges. We want attorney's fees and anything else that we think we should be entitled to under Texas law. All of this respectfully submitted by Ken Paxton, AG, up into Texas, courtesy of his team, to stop this from happening. And this is one business in one state, and there are many more where that came from. So we saw that elsewhere in Congress, Tim Scott, who's a senator in South Carolina, he said, now we're going to introduce legislation to end this, saying following Tuesday's crap Supreme Court ruling on the 14th Amendment, he announced that he's going to be introducing legislation to end this once and for all. He says the cheapening of American citizenship must end. It is an honor and a privilege to be a citizen of this nation. And so the insanity of birth tourism and the industry must end. For too long, wealthy adversaries and those who have no interest in seeing the U.S. flourish have perverted our system. A whole industry exists in China that has assisted more than 1 million Chinese nationals in obtaining American citizenship and passports. The fact that this is allowed to continue and that the Supreme Court endorsed it is insane. This is not a partisan issue, and I hope, yes, it is, because the Democrats are perfectly happy with it. And I hope my colleagues on both sides, they won't, rally to this urgent matter, especially as we honor the sacrifice, the significance, and the opportunity on our 250th birthday. American citizenship is to be cherished, not to be cheapened. But if you had Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts and the three leftists on there decide, it would be basically meaningless. Everybody could come in from anywhere without any consequences at all. So in Congress, we saw Chip Roy was very unhappy about this, rightfully so. And he has a good solution too. How about we just stop all immigration, period? End of story. Joe Biden went out on an immigration bender for the last 4 years, and the country is sick. We are not well. It was too much cookies and ice cream for the left that we didn't want to eat because we're healthy people. The body politic of America needs to have a little bit of a purge. We need to take some time off from all immigration. Here's Chip Roy explaining.
It's some sort of plaything. And now today, the United States Supreme Court manufacturing out of thin air a complete abomination of a ruling by the Chief Justice, suggesting that you can simply become a citizen from being born on dirt, thereby validating the abhorrent practice of baby factories and moving people here to be born to be able to become a citizen, leaving us under no choice but to do what we must do to say, pause immigration. Just stop it. Stop all immigration, because if it's going to be exploited for people to come here when they're pregnant, people allow somebody who's working for the Chinese Communist Party and to come here and have children to become American citizens, and then have our laws exploited like they were under the previous administration. It is why this Congress should act to pause all immigration. This Congress should act immediately to codify what the president has been doing to close the loopholes under asylum and parole, the catch and release policies, and to codify those that a future Biden and Mayorkas administration cannot do to the American people what these radical leftists did to the American people. And then dare sit here and testify under questioning by my colleagues that we need to have more taxpayer money going to the local jurisdictions to make up for what they caused.
It's our responsibility, and we have to take care of every single person on the planet. If they get in here, they need it, lest we be inhumane. Obviously ridiculous. Here's another one from Troy Nels, courtesy of Lindell TV.
I think the Supreme Court did an okay job today, but the birthright citizenship, my humble opinion is we need to put a bed sheet. We need to put a bed sheet over Statue of Liberty for 10 years. Well, we do. Think about it.
Yeah.
We need to have a moratorium on immigration. till we can figure out the number of people that are in our country. We don't even know. We have no clue. Biden left everybody in, right? How many people from the World Cup aren't going back? How many people have overstayed our visas? We got to get a grip and a handle on just who is here. And a way you do that is put a bed sheet over the Statue of Liberty, just a moratorium on immigration. The number of visas, the ones that have overstayed the visas, the abuse and the fraud with the visa programs, we have to get a grip on who is in this country. Yeah. And that's one way to do it. And I wouldn't blame, others to support that. It's just, we don't know who's here. People that are coming here, stomping on the flag, not respecting our country, wanting to change our country, fundamentally change this country. And I was like, well, then what the hell are you doing here? You came here because you were, oppressed, and now you're over here and you don't even like it. And then you get some far left nut jobs too. They don't even claim to support this country, and they're not proud to be an American. Then what the hell are you doing here? No. So 4th of July coming up, we got to pray for our country, because we just have a lot of people in this country that don't belong here. I love the idea with the temporary protected status. The people here, temporary means temporary. But we've just got people here that come over here and they don't respect our culture, our values. They want to fundamentally change this country, and I don't like it.
Neither do we, Troy. Now, the DOJ did say they're accelerating their priority on this. Birth tourism schemes exploit our immigration laws, they wrote, and often violate our criminal laws. And so now we're going to prioritize the prosecution of these across the country. Actors seeking to exploit loopholes to obtain automatic citizenship for their children pose a national security threat and will be brought to justice. And Todd Blanche was also commenting on this. And here is what the acting AG had to say.
From a Department of Justice standpoint, it's obviously focusing our prosecutors and our law enforcement partners on birthing tourism, and it's a booming industry, and it will continue. It will continue given the Supreme Court's decision yesterday. There's other things that DHS can do and the federal government can do in the visa process and the application process to try to minimize or limit the opportunity of folks coming here to not to visit and not to do what they're saying they're doing on their tourist visa, but just to have a baby that can then be a U.S. citizen. So from our standpoint, it's focusing on what is a problem. So everybody should agree that it's a violation of our laws if your intent in coming here, if you're pregnant, is to have a child to become a United States citizen because of our now laws. And so what we have to do as the Department of Justice is make sure our agents, our HSI agents that we work with, and the FBI are focused on stopping that, and that's what we're going to do. From a Department of Justice.
All right, so DOJ will be prioritizing this. Texas is already suing. They were suing before the Supreme Court even handed the decision down. We do have some energy in Congress. We've got Homeland Security now allowing the lower level courts to process the TPS cancellation decision, and they've got some clear deadlines on when the work authorization will end as it relates to the 7 countries that were previously canceled. And so the ship is now adjusting in the wake of the Supreme Court decision. But we've got a country to save, and we've got, if this decision came down at any other time, we would be totally screwed. But fortunately, there are still tools that we can use, and they're recalibrating and reorienting as we speak. So we're going to keep our eye on this issue, continue to cover the developments on this matter. Thank you for joining and subscribing as we do. Now, fallout from this will translate over to elections. And so let's talk about what's happening here. The Trump DOJ now appealing the decisions that were handed down by this woman, Sparkle L. Souknanon, who was born in Trinidad and Tobago, is, according to all reports, a dual citizen, who then said it's illegal for you, America, to actually validate who's voting in your elections. The Trump administration entered an executive order that said we're going to create citizenship lists, pass those off to the states. Many states want those lists, and we're also going to fix some of the rules at the Postal Service so that the mail is not facilitating election fraud. Well, she came down and decided you're not allowed to do that because it's abusive to Americans, many of whom want this, and it violates the privacy rights of somebody. From our perspective, the fraudsters. So what happened, of course, is the decision came down from her. We also saw another decision also related to the executive order come down from an Obama judge. The first woman came from Biden, and her name is Indira Talwani. And both of these cases are now up on appeal from the DOJ. We're waiting for this to get fleshed out. And she came from Massachusetts. Of course, Sparkle is in the District of Columbia. And starting with Sparkle's case, it was the League of Women Voters. And one of these groups that is essentially created to file election litigation, as far as I'm concerned, by guys like Mark Elias and Norm Eisen. They sued. Sparkle handed down a victory in their favor and didn't just say that you only can't use the systems that the Trump administration has created in, for example, DC, limiting this to her jurisdiction in her region. She said no one can use it anywhere. No red states can use the system to validate who's voting. No blue states can use it, not that they would anyways, but everyone is cut off because of privacy and other procedural nonsense. So now the DOJ is saying, well, we're appealing this puppy. They've now submitted their notice of appeal. But while the appeal is pending, they're asking for a stay to say, let us actually use these tools. One of these tools is called the SAVE database, not to be confused with the SAVE Act, which would solve a lot of these things. But the SAVE database is a mechanism by which people can validate status of people. Are they entitled to federal benefits, for example? Can they vote in an election? And they are now cut off from doing it entirely. And so the DOJ is saying this is a disaster. Last week, you, Sparkle, entered a final judgment for the League of Women Voters. You vacated various privacy regulations, the SORNs, for the Social Security database and the Homeland database. And you said that we can't even use the SAVE system that's been reflected in those notices. We can't use the databases that we already have to do anything. That order sent tremors through state and federal entities across the country. Not just the named defendants, not just us here at Homeland Security. You're eviscerating the entire program. And that's because the use of the updated SAVE system had, since its debut, quickly become widespread and indefensible. Federal entities across the country used it to help verify eligibility for public benefits. Okay, so it goes even worse than just elections. She's also saying you can't validate people against benefits rights. State entities used it for both benefit eligibility verification and for their voter registration list. Not anymore. Some states went so far as to pass legislation that is literally dependent on the system. Homeland, we used it to update our own records with more accurate data possessed by our sister agencies. And most importantly, we were bound to use it by a settlement agreement to install it and remain bound to maintain it. And we are bound to update it. And so your order wrecked and upended all of that. And because we are under a pre-existing obligation to maintain the SAVE system, this court's order has put us in an untenable position. So you should stay this order pending appeal. We have a substantial chance of success. We're going to win. The modified SAVE system discloses no information protected by the relevant Social Security Act because citizenship and decedent status, the only SSA data that DHS was disclosing to the actual SAVE users, doesn't meaningfully reveal the identity of any person associated with the number. You're saying it's a privacy problem. It's not. Nor does the modified system violate the Privacy Act because the Act's routine use exceptions accommodate those instances in which Congress has already passed a law and determined that the use of sensitive information is compatible with the purposes for which it was collected. Even if you disagree with what Congress said, they said we can do it. You may not like it, go talk to them. You don't get to override the law. And finally, we have already demonstrably complied with the Privacy Act notice and comment requirement, and the court's imposition of additional procedural requirements is foreclosed by the law. You're acting illegally. We already followed the law. You can't make it more difficult to comply with. And would call into question the legality of other privacy notices published by agencies across the federal government. And so this simply cannot be right. And because we have a substantial chance of winning against your terrible order, and especially because the balance of the equities tilts so decisively in our favor, you should enter a stay of the judgment while we appeal this thing. Let's go back. On June 22nd, not long ago, this court entered a judgment for the League of Women Voters on their claims that this new SAVE system was unlawful. They said that there were 3 modifications, and that would now mean the system has access to the records of natural-born citizens, access to Social Security databases, and they could run all of these checks and do bulk searches and so on. They had challenged the system of record notices, the SORNs, that made those changes. Now, the court agreed with them and entered an order vacating all of it. We can't do it at all. So now that order raises immediate roadblocks. We already are in the middle of agency activities. For starting, compliance with the court's order is wreaking havoc on the plans of various agencies at both federal and state levels. Prior to the court's order, the modified system processed over 1 million status verification requests each day. They were doing 1 million checks for benefits and other things, all canceled. The Department of Transportation, for instance, requires states to use the SAVE system to verify eligibility of CDLs. Can we give you a CDL? Are you allowed to drive a commercial vehicle? We know that they're being handed CDLs and then killing dozens of Americans recently. The Department of Housing and Urban Development had also intended to use the program to give applicants benefits for housing. And several states also relied on the program to make eligibility determinations for state benefits, public benefits, and their lists. All of this ongoing. We've got midterms approaching quickly in 2026. Now, further, within Homeland itself, the inability to use the SAVE system that you just obliterated has degraded our ability to update our own records. We can't even use it internally with more up-to-date information that we get from our sister agencies about status and immigration. The same inability also forces DHS to flunk its data sharing obligations with federal, state, and local entities around the country, and it severely degrades the government's ability to even police its system and public benefits against the threats of fraud because they want more fraud. They're happy with what's happening in Minneapolis and elsewhere, the Leering centers and so on. Now, the upshot is that citizenship and immigration status verification now involves a far more time-consuming but less reliable effort. And all the while, Homeland is now forced to expend significant resources in maintaining the old system and the new system, and we're having to make sure we don't lose the fruits of the improvements. So meanwhile, this case is not the only lawsuit on this subject. In October 24, a full calendar year before the League of Voters came in, we also litigated a different but closely related suit. There in Florida accused us of failing to abide by our statutory obligations. This section of the law passed by Congress, 1373C, requires Homeland to, quote, respond to an inquiry by a federal, state, or local government to check citizenship or immigration status. Florida says, hey, Joe Biden, you're not checking these requests. You have an obligation under federal law. Congress said you have to do this. You're not. So we're suing you. Eventually, 3 other states would join Florida in that suit, each leveling the same charge. Now, the Florida litigation on this came to a close when the Northern District of Florida ordered a dismissal of that case with prejudice. The court's order said, interesting, that the order expressly approved a settlement agreement between the parties, stating that it retained jurisdiction for 20 years to enforce compliance, saying any party the court concluded may seek to enforce the settlement brought by the parties. So they're saying you don't even have jurisdiction over this. There was another judge who entered a settlement agreement between the states and the DOJ, in this case, Homeland, and said, I'm in charge of this issue moving forward. Now they're suing in your court, and you're doing something that goes against the settlement agreement that came back down in 24. So the settlement agreement is detailed, but is relevant here. It specifically sets out various obligations under the SAVE system. We must ensure, as Homeland, that SAVE allows searches with both full and partial socials. They must ensure that SAVE has the capacity to process bulk upload verification requests so that users of the system don't need to input requests one by one. So all of the objections from the women voters all are already articulated in the settlement. And they must ensure that the SAVE program has the capacity to timely deliver responses. We have said we're going to ensure that this is all going to remain optional and operational, rather, and a modification to this settlement agreement could change this, or if there's unforeseen technical limitations, but otherwise, we're going to do it. We're going to honor the agreement. So in the wake of this court's order that vacated all of those capabilities, this judge said, you can't do that. I'm Sparkle from Trinidad. The plaintiffs in Florida filed an emergency motion. They sued and said, enforce this agreement. They say, well, now Homeland is in breach. Florida sues Homeland. So the League of Women sue Homeland. They say, get rid of the system. Judge says, system's gone. Florida says, where the hell does the system go? We entered into a settlement with you that said you'll keep the system. So now we've breached that agreement. In several material respects, we've disabled critical functionalities of the SAFE system. Within hours in Northern District of Florida, they ordered us to file a response. So you say we can't use it. The judge in Florida is saying, what you guys have to use it. The motion makes a preliminary showing that we're in violation of our obligations. And they are asking us now to explain what the hell we did. Saying a judge ordered us, you need to immediately restore the bulk upload function and the ability to search with socials. Amazing. So thank you, Florida. Days after this court's entry, we appealed this court's opinion. That matter is now pending in the DC Court of Appeals. So now we ask you to just stop this. You can't continue on with your lower level order because another judge is ordering us to put it back in place. When the government is a party, the factors about public interest need to be considered, and we're going to win. We have a substantial chance of winning this. On balance, you rejected our merits argument at the dispositive motion stage, but nevertheless, the court's analysis hardly reflects the kind of slam dunk case, saying that we have a lack of any substantial chance of success on appeal. And so for these reasons, we're going to win. And therefore, you should stay your order that eliminates this database. First, you held in your decision, Judge Sparkle, the modified SAVE system violates the prohibition on sensitive disclosures. But respectfully here, Sparky, the court's analysis conflates two interactions at play in any given inquiry to the SAVE system. We're not disclosing sensitive anything. First, the disclosure of information by Social Security to Homeland, and you're conflating that with the disclosure of information by DHS to the user. So you're essentially saying that the info is in violation of the Social Security privacy stuff because it's going from social all the way to the user, but it's not. Homeland is breaking the chain. As the court correctly noted, the act in the SSA Act, Social Security account numbers and other records shall be confidential. And two parts of that provision, though, warrant special attention. The restriction doesn't apply to records if they were obtained or maintained pursuant to other authority predating the act. There's a carve out. And second, the restriction applies only to a limited subset of records, the latter term meaning any record that is compiled with respect to other numbers. Now, recall here, Judge, that the court's description of the modified SAVE user experience, you said upon the entry of certain information that the user has, you go in, get to the terminal, put the information in. Sparkle writes, the system discloses the uploaded data to SSA and then uses it to search the master file. In response, then the SSA automatically discloses the master file back to Homeland, which includes the citizenship data, a yes or no deceased indicator, true, false, matching certain fields like name, date of birth, social. And only when a partial social is provided, it returns the full social. Then after all internal checks are completed by Homeland, that agency, Homeland, automatically via the SAVE system generates one of the following responses. They put all of that in, so it's all unbundled in the search. But then Homeland bundles it up and says, oh, all of that data, we run a little algorithm through it, boom, ChatGPT spits out US citizen or deceased or one of three prompts to enter more information. So you're not actually getting all of that. The user is not actually getting all of that data. That's what goes into the analysis But what the computer spits back out is just something simple. Yeah, citizen. Yes, citizen, dead, alive, dead, whatever. So the key point is that Homeland, DHS, that is the SAVE system, does not disclose the social or any other info to the system user at all, nor does the SAVE system disclose a protected related record that's protected under the law to the user, because mere citizenship or decedent status, for example, the only fields that Homeland actually does disclose, that is not an identity that is associated with the SAVE query. Now, indeed, the statute elsewhere distinguishes between identity of an individual and the fact that the individual is a citizen or non-citizen under U.S. code elsewhere. The only disclosure of information that might be protected occurs when social discloses certain info to Homeland, which again, Homeland does not give out to the user. But that disclosure does not implicate this provision of the law, because social would not have obtained or maintained that information pursuant to authority enacted after 1991. We already have the permission to do that. So the maintenance of this record dates all the way back to 1936. We passed the Social Security Act in 1935 and been able to do that ever since. And the primary authority governing the maintenance of this data also precedes the 1990 cutoff date. It came back from the Privacy Act of 1974. So accordingly, nothing about the SAVE system runs afoul of any protections that you relied on there, Judge. And second, the court concluded that even apart from the Social Security Act, the disclosure of the data, the judge said, well, there's another reason you can't access it. Social says you can't do it. The laws that Congress passed, but clearly we can. She also made a second argument to buttress the first, that is a failure. Social Security data to Homeland and SAVE users violates the Privacy Act. The court said, Sparkle, that those protections are subject to certain exceptions, and is relevant here when the relevant data is put to, quote, routine use, meaning the use of such a record for a purpose which is compatible with the purpose for which it was collected. That's an exception. The definition is expansive. The DC Circuit has already said this. Judges of that court have taken different approaches to the term compatible, with one even opining that purposes are compatible so long as there is no conflict between them. Here's a case from 2017, which you need to read there, Judge. Here's one from 1993 that you also should take a look at. But for the purposes of this case, it suffices that Congress itself presumably thought the use of the socials for citizenship verification purposes was compatible with the purposes of socials being collected in the first place. After all, Congress even wrote in the law, notwithstanding any other provision, an entity or official may not in any way restrict any government entity from receiving information about citizenship or immigration in U.S. code. That language could hardly sweep more broadly, way broad, leading to a strong logical inference that social may not restrict Homeland from getting this information that's in social's control and can only be retrieved using the numbers. Now, consequently, complying with this law requires doing precisely what the court said could not be done in this order. While the court found that socials were incompatible with voter verification purposes, the better understanding of the routine use exception is that where disclosure is made, the routine use exception is satisfied, we can get the data. And third, the court also held that Homeland and the social privacy rules violated notice and comment requirements, like we didn't give people enough time to consider opposing views. But the Privacy Act says you only need 30 days. And talks about routine use of records, and this was published back in October 2025, and we immediately requested submissions of new comments. And so we followed the proper mechanisms as well. And so for all these reasons, along with those expounded at length in the defendant's dispositive motion, we stand a strong chance of success on the merits. We're going to win. So we're also suffering from irreparable harm as it stands. When the government is a party, you need to consider that the modified SAVE system was no one-hit wonder. It was used, and it was intended to be used by a panoply of federal, state, and local governments to verify voter eligibility, eligibility for benefits, to combat fraud, to satisfy various statutory requirements. We used it to verify eligibility for various programs. Plans for even more uses were already actively in the works. We needed the system to ensure that where DHS's sister agencies had more reliable data than we did, we could update it. And in the absence of these new features, critical identity verifications can only occur much more slowly at a much greater cost. The result is a significantly greater risk of undetected voter fraud, which they want, benefits fraud, which they're happy with because it gets funneled right back into the Democratic Party, and other deceitful conduct. And of course, given its substantial investments in the upgrades, Homeland cannot simply throw those efforts to waste, necessitating a dual-track approach while this is all pending. Meaning we got to maintain the old SAFE system, which is being upgraded, and then also use the new SAFE system, revert back to the old system while we're building the new system. None of this is to mention the significant burdens imposed on non-federal entities as well. Many state and local agencies rely on this. They're already using it to create accurate voter registration lists, and multiple states have gone so far as to pass legislation depending on this new system that you've now got rid of. But that's not all. As a result of your order, we are now under two diametrically opposed obligations. As you know, your order vacates this entire system, the modified system. That system is being built with updates, and it includes records of natural-born citizens, access to social records, including numbers, allows bulk searches and more. And so complying with your order means we have to disable the system. But compliance with those requirements brings us out of compliance with the settlement agreement in Florida. That requires us to allow all that to happen. We have to allow searches with numbers. We have to be able to process bulk uploads and more. And so now Florida, they're unhappy about this. They've now lost access to these things. They negotiated it. Another federal judge in Florida enforced it and is now screaming at us, "Why'd you violate my order?" They're now ordering us to show cause to explain why this is happening. So your order has put the federal sovereign in an untenable position. Compliance with both obligations is impossible. That irreparable harm alone warrants a stay. Now, against all these quintessentially irreparable harms, they can muster but little, the League of Voters. The intergovernmental disclosures of socials, the disclosure of status, at most, the need for a modest affirmative effort imposed by the states, not by the federal government, is confirming these people for voting. And so respectfully, those equities simply cannot hold a candle to the avalanche of burdens that we're having to deal with as a result of your order. And because the equities tilt so heavily in our favor, a stay pending appeal is especially warranted in this case. And so stop your order. We have to comply with Florida, and you're not allowing us to do that. And what is the consequence of her decision? Can't check for fraud, can't check for citizenship status, can't check for dead people. And so voter lists will still be riddled with even more fraud. But now it's going up on appeal, and they've got a very interesting little split happening because they've got competing orders, one from DC, one from Florida, where they actually care about that stuff. And so we'll see what she does, but ultimately it's working its way up on appeal regardless. Very nice filing and a beautiful discovery, courtesy of the DOJ. Now, the second appeal here is the one that came from Indira Talwani, an Obama judge who is a very leftist judge. She blocked Trump previously, and this order more related to the Postal Service. And so the DOJ is taking her up. She's also in Massachusetts, where many of the other rigged judges live and reside. And here is what this one says. We'll hit the highlights here because it's about standing. It's about ripeness. It's about failing on the merits. So we're talking about justiciability. And here's what the DOJ says in their appeal. They say, all right, Talwani, the president issued an executive order to fix our elections. The EO is an intra-branch directive, and it changes nothing about the administration of any elections at all. But nonetheless, you granted them a victory, saying we can't make any changes, but we're going to be harmed absent a stay. And so you need to stay your lower order. Remember Trump's EO? He said that we've got these citizenship lists that we're going to be compiling. They're going to combine a bunch of the records that we just talked about, Social Security, save data, and more, provide the list back down to the states. Now, the order doesn't specify any purpose of these things. We're saying we're going to follow all of the laws anyways. And in June, Mark Wayne Mullin signed a memo saying that we're going to create the list, release the list, people can check against the list. Then we'll also have the Postal Service only take mail from people who are on the list. The proposed rule hit the Federal Register. We talked about that before. And the proposed rule has a notice and comment period. It's still open for that, in fact, right now. No final rule has even been issued. But when all that went down, the Blues sued. In this case, California and the blue state said, you can't do this. You're going to wreck our election rigging plans. So how dare you? So the judge said, you're stopped. You're in violation of federal law. And now they're saying we're going to appeal. Why? We're going to win. There is no public interest in stopping what we're doing right now. These are internal government deliberations. We don't even have any rules that have been handed down. It's all in contemplation right now. And so it's being argued that they have no standing, right? Article 3 standing. How have you been harmed? Is there an injury in fact where there's not even a rule that's being acted upon? They say no, it hasn't. All this is a directive. It's not changing anything about elections in any state. They're free to conduct their elections. They don't have to look at the list. They don't have to go vote by mail. They don't have to even engage at all. Just go do your thing. That's fine. Their real concern, though, is not the executive order. What they fear is the creation of a state citizenship list and a possible future rule that hasn't happened yet and a possible future criminal investigation. But a possibility of future harm doesn't give them a basis to sue. If that harm ultimately starts to emerge, then they can come back and sue. But it's still being contemplated. Standing requires more than the possibility of potentially adverse regulation. Now, in the future, if this does come down, they can come back, but it hasn't. And their claims are also not ripe. The court already recognized that claims are not ripe. We've got federal elections on November 4th. But you say they are ripe, and either a claim is ripe for now or it's not. You said it was only ripe for some of these things, but not for future things. So if it's not ripe for the future things, how is it ripe for this one? By saying that our claims are unripe after the November 3rd elections, but they're ripe now, is a contradiction. And these considerations are not the same. Ripeness is a doctrine that is meant to prevent the courts from entangling themselves in abstract disagreements. So if it's not good enough for a future claim, but it's good enough for a claim now, then why is it also not good enough for the future claim? I mean, if it's a problem, then it's a problem now and in the future. But you said it's not a problem in the future because it hasn't happened yet. But it's bad enough to happen for this first election. So it makes no sense, Judge. They sued, and much like other memos in prior cases, you are trying to make it fit, but it doesn't by your own terms. And so in short, they're not ripe. Your conclusion as to the future elections and why they couldn't have those claims move forward is the right one. It should also be applied to the upcoming election. And by the way, they're also going to fail on the merits. The agencies implementing this order are implementing a broad policy vision of the executive branch. They're not suffering any harm here. Trump ordered the agencies to literally follow the law. And so you're presuming, before you have any evidence that we're not going to do that, and you entered a summary judgment on some speculation in the future that hasn't even happened yet. So this is all comfortably within the tradition of other executive orders. And they can't challenge something that hasn't even been implemented yet. So our position is that if they believe that the final agency action is unlawful, then they can sue at that time. Any injunction now, though, is unnecessary and it's not appropriate. And so we ask you to stay your lower level decision. We're suffering irreparable harm here. We do not understand that this court's injunction stops us from working on the portal to give state officials citizenship verification. They think we can still do the USCIS, Social Security, DOS databases, provided that those efforts apply only to elections after the midterms. So we're still working on this. Like you say, we can't use it now, but we're going to use it for the next one. Then continuing Postal Service rulemaking, we're still doing that. We're initiating any investigations and prosecutions that are relevant to the order. And any contrary order from you that requires us to immediately stop all action would be inconsistent with your previous ruling. You just said that we can't do it for this election, but you said apparently they don't have claims as it relates to the future elections, so we can use it. But nevertheless, we are still harmed. As to this portal, many states will be denied access to verification systems, and red states want access. And the Postal Service is also in the middle of processing these things. And so any delay of this will be harmful. And so if you wanted us to stop everything, your injunction would massively disrupt our efforts to bring about a functioning citizenship portal for all upcoming elections. It would also severely disrupt the mail rules to promulgate a final rule that would improve the visibility of ballots in the mail and facilitate enforcement of federal law. And these steps involve a lot. We're doing technological work to bring portals online, and we're working on it right now. And all of the other factors support our argument. On the other side, they don't have any interest. All they've got right now, their foreseeable harm is hypothetical, based on speculation and a series of other future contingencies that haven't even come to pass yet. And so for these reasons, we want you to stay your rule. We're going to be appealing this up to the First Circuit if we have to. But even your own decision, Judge Indira, is inconsistent with itself. And so maybe you should grant that stay and allow us to secure our elections. Now, one person who has been on this for a while is Senator Eric Schmidt. He said the first duty of government is to protect the American people, not illegal aliens who may or may not be voting in mass numbers. We'll come to that on the next segment. But Democrats have lost sight of that basic responsibility. And the American families are paying the price when these judges come in and say, we have to give out our federal tax dollars to beneficiaries who are not even Americans. And if you want to check to see if they are Americans so that they can vote, or so they can get housing, or so they can get food or whatever, you're not allowed to do that because it's a privacy right violation, I guess, of the people who are asking for the benefits to be handed out to them. So here's Eric Schmidt explaining that we need to focus on the people, not the illegal aliens.
Yeah, we owe it to those families, and we owe it to potentially families that could still be, ensnared in these tragic circumstances because of the Democrats' crazy policies of opening our border up to 15 to 20 million people illegally. And by the way, Sean, just earlier this year in the State of the Union, President Trump said, hey, please stand if you think the first duty of government is to protect its citizens or not. No Democrat stood for that, not a single one, because at this point, the Democrat Party now is sort of post-American, and they care way more about illegal immigrants they do about American citizens. And just to put that into context, Sean, of what is a sanctuary jurisdiction? Sometimes people ask me this. Here's what it is in real life. It is when a place like Chicago or Minneapolis or California or New York decide that when a criminal illegal alien who's been convicted of rape or some violent crime is being released from prison, they will not notify ICE for that individual to be deported on the spot, which they should. So they're releasing these people into the community because they would rather have them released into the community than be deported. It's totally crazy. It's this suicidal empathy. It's totally nuts. And the Democrats have to own this now because this is no longer a party that actually believes in secure borders or even federal law enforcing our immigration laws.
It's true. They only care about their perpetual power. And anything that will help facilitate that, even if it hollows out America, wrecks our elections such that people have no integrity in the elections, no faith in them, the country will ultimately start to break apart at the seams. They'll be happy about that because then they can remake it in their communist hellscape image. But we're not going to let that happen. And the DOJ now fighting back against these lower level judges who think they run the country, appealing these things up. We'll see what the Court of Appeals does. I think that these issues will probably at some point work their way up to the Supreme Court in this administration. And we'll keep our eye on it. Election integrity is necessary to a functioning republic. Otherwise, we're all just slaves and beholden to the people running the election. So we'll keep our eye on this one. Thanks for joining and subscribing as we do. All right, we got some more updates here. And let's take a look at this one coming out of Arizona, because this one is very interesting. Illegal aliens are voting in much bigger numbers than anybody cares to let on. You always hear the standard refrain from the mainstream media. Oh, it's a handful of people. First, it's definitely not happening. Then it's, well, it might be happening, but it's very small. Then it's, well, it is happening, but it's not widespread enough to change the outcome of the election. Then it turns out it might actually change the outcome of the election. And then finally, you end up where they're going in LA, which is, that's okay. We want illegal aliens to vote in our election, and we're going to help them do it. So now this was a story from the Maricopa County Recorder, Justin Heap, and the Epoch Times in Arizona. They came out and they said that he was speaking at this event. You can see him there with the microphone, and they were doing this live thread on it. And in one of the posts, they said, Maricopa County Recorder Justin Heap, this is why the Board of Supervisors is so mad at him, and they want him to not have any electoral power at all. We saw that the outgoing Maricopa County Recorder, that hack called Stephen Richer, divested the county recorder's office of a ton of power and made it so that when Justin came into office after having beat him, that he would not have the same powers that Stephen Richer had. Kind of make his office smaller, because Justin came in on the mandate that he's going to figure out what the hell's going on in our elections. And so he was out and he said at this new event, he said he ran the names of 61,000 voters through a database to determine whether any were illegal immigrants, aka aliens. That's the federal definition. Guess what? 400 of them were, and half of them had voted. So 400 out of 61,000, and half of those people had voted. And it might sound like a pretty small number, but we're talking about small numbers, because in Arizona and in Georgia, the margins were 11,000, 12,000 votes, very small numbers. So another Arizona representative called Rachel Jones Keschel, she did the math for us. And she said, okay, well, if Secretary Fontes says that illegals don't vote, the facts tell a different story. County Recorder Heap said a sample of 61,000 registrants run through the SAVE database that the federal judges just obliterated, and which Trump is appealing to higher courts, found 400 non-citizens. Now, half of them had voted, according to the report from the Epoch Times. If this math held up over the entire state voter roll, so in Arizona, 4.34 million, then you would have 28,459 non-citizens registered and 14,230 that actually voted. That's more votes than ballots separating Trump-Biden in 2020. Yeah, it was a small number. And the 2020 AG race, and almost as many for the 2022 governor race. 11,700 in Georgia, very similar in Arizona. Maybe that's why Adrian Fontes is trying to get to the Supreme Court to block proof of citizenship, which is a thing in Arizona. And that's in Arizona, which is way more strict than California or some other blue states. It's time to remove Fontes from office so we can remove the non-citizens from our voter rolls. And this supports the evidence that we've seen from the blue states. Every single time Harmeet Dillon sues to get access to the list to validate whether or not they are filling their list with illegal aliens or dead people or residents who moved out of state, they melt down. They don't want anybody to see the list because this is where they control the outcome. So in addition to that, they say no one votes illegally, but we've got another one. Daily Caller with an exclusive here saying federal authorities just arrested and charged an illegal alien in New Jersey for voting in a federal election. The thing that never happens happened again. Person is called Marion Cheritoon, 68-year-old from Slovakia was charged with illegally voting in a federal election, as well as making false statements while applying for U.S. citizenship. Allegedly registering to vote in New Jersey, falsely said, yes, I'm a U.S. citizen. He then went on to vote in the 2022 midterms as well. Now, this person applied for citizenship and allegedly claimed he never voted in an election, but he did. Never got citizenship as his voting history was discovered during the application process because they're actually checking it now. Daily Caller saying if convicted, maximum 1 year jail, and the count of unlawful procurement of citizenship also carries a maximum penalty of 10. Case was brought by the U.S. Attorney Election Integrity Task Force, which is good news. And we've started to see more and more of these numbers popping up. In May, 4 green card holders living in New Jersey, they were charged with illegally voting in federal elections, saying they never did such a thing, but they did. Now, the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, the SAVE Act, it would require proof of American citizenship in order to register to vote. Of course, that's stalled in Congress, and they're not interested at this moment in really taking any hard action to advance it, even though the American people want it to happen. Now, going back to Arizona, this representative at the state level called John Gillette shared some interesting points about what is going on in Arizona and how these systems that manage the list are so perverted. He said, here are some facts with receipts by paragraph and page numbers about what Katie Hobbs and others have done, the governor here in Arizona. This will be one of several posts on this topic that the weak leftist media won't cover, but we will. Most won't understand some of this, but it's simple. It's not algorithm, it's not passwords, not logs, not the technical accounting that the courts don't even understand. All it is old-fashioned garbage in, garbage out. The system starts with AVID, A-V-I-D. It's the Arizona Voter Roll System. All of this, according to a state representative who shares some receipts here, is run from a single-family home in Salem, Oregon, that is stored on MS Cloud. The system didn't work from day one, but everybody involved rolled it out. An interface had to be built to provide online easy voter registrations and updates from Service Arizona, the website you go to register, to AVID for processing. After the rollout, we got the glitch. Now, that makes the MVD, Max, and Service Arizona transition central to voter registration data integrity. And this means that no event logs occur, and the recorder is fed the unvetted garbage records from MVD and the ERIC databases. So in other words, the recorder wouldn't know whether they were valid or not. Saying real-time MVD interface, and he's going through all of these change orders. Okay, so there are government contracts that are crafted and created. Then there are change orders that will modify those contracts. He lists a couple of them here. 1, under CTR 057577, change order number 1, pages 5 and 6. The real-time MVD interface when the system was being deployed was not ready to go live. The voter registration compliance depended on a core system connection that was not ready to interface with the MVD. Think of it like your DMV. Voter records pulling from driving records. The risk, though, was documented in 2019, but it wasn't discovered until 2024, page 2, 6, and 14 of the contract. Saying the main issue was officials had early written notice this was problematic long before the public later discovered the glitch, because it's always a glitch, or an administrative error, or oversight, or poor training for some poll worker. Then AVID went live while the MVD legacy was being replaced by Max, so a new system to interface with driving records. A major system transition overlapped election cycle operations, and we've got 2 parallel systems increasing risk. The state then relied on a temporary bridge. The delivered solution was a workaround, not the fully intended real-time interface, and then Service Arizona, and this is in change order 4 now, was a critical voter registration intake path. Go to the website, register to vote, you'll get a ballot. But the main issue is that online voter registrations depended on a separate interface that wasn't even built. Then they added in an amendment number 4, Exhibit 1, change order number 8. Pima and Maricopa, the biggest county in the state, audit controls were added later. So no audit capability. Logging, confirmation, and reconciliation were not built into the original county interface. Similarly, the basic proof of what was even sent or received or what was unconfirmed, it also came late. And so event tracking that was reliable for the two largest counties wasn't even a part of the software, was missing or insufficient all the way up until 22. So the record now points to Hobbs, Fontes, Stephen Richer, the guy who wrecked the county recorder's office before he handed it over to Justin Heap, and Swoboda in Change Order 1 and Change Order 8, saying the unlawful exposure begins when defects are known, not fixed, and the public, press, and political leaders are all misled. And he gives you the documents. It's literally the contract number, all of the change orders. They say, oh, we're missing this. We need this tool. Can you change it? Yes, here, modify the contract. Oh, need this, need that, the other thing. The whole system is just perverted. So he explains a little bit more. He says, Hobbs, the county, who was the Secretary of State, who then got herself elected to be the governor, used a major voter roll integrity system that touched election data, voter records, database updates, ERIC, MVD, SAFE, and system improvements with an Oregon company whose public corporation record points back to a residential Salem address in her own election. And the contract record does not show a clear requirement for FedRAMP, AZDHS, Cyber Command, ADAOA, ASET, or any equivalent critical infrastructure security testing. Right? There are standards on how to build these things to make sure that they're functional according to proper protocols. They didn't do it. That is a major due diligence and cyber governance failure. AVID was not ordinary software. Under federal critical infrastructure law, U.S. Code 42, voter registration databases and associated IT systems have to fall within election infrastructure guidelines. So Arizona should be able to produce the complete vetting, testing, authorization, and risk acceptance file immediately. Look at contract number, CTR number, at the record. Is this why Adrian Fontes, the current Secretary of State, doesn't want to share the data even under subpoena? Could it be the number of duplicates? That's the same person who's registered by two multiple political parties with separate registration numbers. This is not a glitch. It's not being fixed as Hobbs declared. So here are some questions. Was the software ever submitted to a review system to see whether it's good or not? No, it isn't. Was AVID ever reviewed by Arizona Department of Homeland Security Cyber Command? No, it wasn't. Was there an authorization to operate this package for AVID? Unknown. Did it undergo any other standards testing or any other independent testing? No. If not, who approved the operating of a voter registration database without an independent review? Katie Hobbs did. Adrian Fontes did. Was AVID hosted in a cloud, a vendor-managed or third-party environment requiring cloud security authorization? Yeah, it was, MS Cloud. Did the contract require penetration testing, source code review, vulnerability scanning, audit log validation, independent red team testing? No. Did the contract allow the state or any independent third party to test this without vendor permission or limitation? No. And were county recorders told whether it had passed testing? Unknown. Who signed any of this? The same people who, in our opinion, stole the elections. Hobbs and Fontes and Allie Bones. And so he shared some screenshots of what some of these systems look like from Arizona. So this is all apparently built by, some company that's based in Oregon, and they just kind of slap something together called AVID, Access Voter Information Database, and take a look at the documents, and it's all just deployed without any actual testing or validation. He shares this over here as well. It is sharing this with a consulting company over in Salem, Oregon. And the registered agent is called Puri Ashish, who is also the manager of the organization. So very interesting allegations, if all of that is true, that they just kind of vibe coded something and deployed it without any proper testing. And he said, here's some more dirt on it, on how this whole thing works. Richer and the board said that the audit was good for the 2020 election, but there was another change order. And prior to change order number 8 in the contract, no real meaningful or any other audit could occur because it didn't have the capabilities. So the 2020 election was audited. They couldn't do it. It wasn't in the system. How do we know? Change order 8 changed the contract to build out that functionality. Maricopa and Pima and the transmission problem was not theory. It was a real issue. It required literally a formal change order. Change order 8 says Pima and Maricopa kept their own voter registration systems and then synced updates with AVID in real time or overnight. It further states that audits between the systems showed mechanisms were needed to reconcile the differences and then to identify discrepancies. So the intended audience of this did not include the legislature. Imagine that. Here's Amendment 4. This document describes more services that are going to be provided, and he's sharing that they did not want this to go, it looks like, to the legislature. All of this was going to go to the Secretary of State and others. But in it says, what are we going to do? This document now provides services, describes services for setting up auditing between the AVID application and the Pima County and Maricopa County voter registration systems that would allow for reconciliation of the records, exchange between the systems, and tracking of updates on changes on either end. So presumably it didn't exist before. In addition, the new functionality will allow for conducting periodic audits of voter data between AVID and the county systems and allow for identification of reasons for any differences and facilitate better mapping of data to remove discrepancies in the future. So the audit functionality gets built in 22, even though they said everything that happened in 2020 was perfectly legitimate. Now he's got another one. He said Georgia had many of the same problems, all of it blown off by the mainstream media as a right-wing conspiracy. But then here is this. The Dems bought it and they didn't like what they got. And so they buried it in with the rest of the data. And he says, here are lessons learned, case studies from Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, and Rhode Island, which came out July 2024, the Center for Election Innovation and Research. And what does the Center for Election Information and Research confirm to everybody? Oh, AVID was launched as a minimum viable product. It was not a fully finished system. This organization that did the review says Arizona launched its minimum viable product November 19, and that each state has continued to develop new functioning after the fact. They also say that AVID launched November 25th. It was first used in local elections, then got upgraded MVD interface April 2020. So it was a brand new system. Finding, AVID was used before full system maturity. Minimum viable product is not the same thing as fully ready election infrastructure. The whole system was just dumped out. We also confirmed that Pima and Maricopa had to build interfaces to even connect with the system, saying, we say, this agency, that Maricopa and Pima continued to maintain their own voter registration systems and were involved in AVID development largely because they had to create information and interfaces for their systems to connect with this for data transfer. Our finding is that AVID was not a clean single system replacement for the two largest counties. It was a hybrid architecture dependent on transmission reliability. And they also admit that the record auditing tooling was needed because of the structure. Then after, they implemented a record audit feature to ensure that Maricopa and Pima all matched statewide and AVID data, and that voters in those counties may be alerted that some information is not available in real time because it interfaces with them nightly. So this supports the argument that the system was not truly real time statewide. Pima and Maricopa were special cases, and reconciliation was a known architecture problem. And so the system used to register people in Arizona and to conduct the election was minimum viable product, according to them, not even functional, fully vetted election infrastructure. but we're the conspiracy theorists. This one came from the Center for Election Innovation and Research, all being validated by Representative John Gillette, Arizona House, and he knows what he's talking about. So while that's happening, people are now asking questions. Is this the cause of the many problems bringing up people in the site books? We had several issues, says this woman, Jackie, where we would try to find people and voters would not appear. We had to look them up manually. One letter or number had been changed in their registration. We knew this because many people had their mail-in ballot with correct info, but they wanted to vote in person. We would search for people in the site book, but they wouldn't come up. It was crazy. I had worked at the same voting location a few times and had checked in many of them at previous elections. On another issue was voters getting 2 ballots after they had updated their online registration. We called the county to find out which ballot they should vote on. In all cases, both ballots were live ballots. They had to be given a second registration number because nothing had been reconciled. And he says, bingo, this is the reason I posted. All of these systems and the roles don't match, and the BIOS times are not correct. Nothing is being reconciled. System time and poll book time don't match. What you have posted is what Hobbs and the company knew all in 2019, but they did it anyways. So these are infrastructure systemic problems across the board. And when you have a bunch of kind of chaos and madness in the systems, you can exploit it to your own benefit. And with illegal aliens voting in the elections and with the systems not being able to validate anything, it's no wonder Joe Biden won the election by 12,000 votes. So what's happening now is the FBI, according to MS Now, somebody leaked this over to them. They say the FBI is directing hundreds of analysts to now dig into Georgia and probe the election that happened down there. Apparently, Kash Patel making this a priority expert. Ken Delanian, who gets leaks from the FBI, says that it's happening. There's an extraordinary effort to find evidence of the fraud. He says it's a conspiracy theory. We know it isn't. Documents obtained by MS Now, which the 2 officials speaking on anonymity to share these matters, they said were related to Georgia. They show that Kash is now authorizing intelligence analysts to work overtime, including weekends and holidays, to figure out what the heck happened, and is ordering people from all field offices to participate. A quote from the memo says, in support of the director's office's priority, the Directorate of Intelligence and Criminal Division are requesting all FBI field offices to immediately surge support to an FBI Atlanta priority investigation. And that could be a lot of FBI guys, including 260 of them. The guidance didn't specify exactly how many, but overtime and more has now been authorized. One person said they're looking for information, derogatory information. The idea is to build a case. There's a pretty good case that we could build. We don't even have the pallets full of the ballots. FBI got those 600 boxes of election records. We know that in Georgia, they deleted a bunch of the actual images of the ballots and didn't want anybody to see the physical ballots either, but the FBI got those as well. So we saw other updates in the Raffensperger case. So we know election lists are how they really steal the elections in total. And the battle has been going on between the United States of America and Brad Raffensperger for quite some time. He, of course, is the Secretary of State out there who just lost his election handedly. And the DOJ is responding to him. They said, we actually can get your list now. There was a split decision in another location, the 6th Circuit, and the court held that in Michigan, their voter list is not a record that actually comes into the possession of an officer of the election because it's internally generated. The court said that officers of elections need not retain and preserve these records because the NVRA and HAVA require Michigan election officials to alter it routinely. But the dissent pointed out the CRA contains no source limitation there at all. And so the historical backdrop against which Title III was passed belies any limitation. The majority's reading would produce bizarre results, and it would exclude self-generated lists that designate people by race. And so you should not accept this. But this case also held that the AG's demand was inadequate because the required statement of the basis and the purpose was spread out to multiple letters. And so ultimately, that approach is problematic. And we're letting you know about that. So the battle continues in Georgia. And we're hopeful that we get those records very soon. They're freaked out about it. One way we could secure our elections is with the SAVE Act. Here's Mike Johnson commenting about that process happening in the House.
We've got 2 or 3 different ideas on how to make the Save America measures fit into the budget reconciliation process. As the name implies, it's got to be reconciling the budget. It's got to be tied to fiscal issues. And one of the ways to do it is to create a grant program to incentivize states to enact election integrity measures. There are other ways as well. We're discussing all those. That is going to be a big component of what we send to the Senate.
Yeah, well, that's it. Spot on. Thank you for all that. So anyway,
we got to get that baby passed so we can fix a lot of these problems. And here was more from J.D. Vance talking about what is coming next.
Legislation is so important. The president has been laser focused on getting the Save America Act passed. And you're right, we actually have the majority of Senate Republicans who will support it. I actually don't think the problem that they have is with the Save America Act legislation itself. The problem that they have, with all due respect, is that they're worshiping dying institutional norms when the Democrats are in fact bragging that as soon as they get control, they're going to throw that stuff aside and make it so much harder for Republicans to even win elections. So what some of these Republicans are saying is they don't want to give up on the norm of the filibuster, this sacred Senate institutional norm that a few senators are obsessed with, including, of course, Mitch McConnell. The problem, Laura, is that Democrats themselves are saying the minute that they get power, the filibuster is going out the door.
It's true.
So unilaterally submitting and surrendering as Republicans when Democrats are openly bragging that they're going to get rid of the filibuster, it's just handing your enemy a weapon that they're going to use to strike you down. It's absurd. It doesn't make any sense. But that's why we frankly have to get better senators in there in the future.
Yep, he's right about that. Cornyn's on his way out. Hopefully Ken Paxton will be replacing him. But they've already, the Democratic Party, introduced a resolution to say we're going to pack the court, we're going to end the filibuster, we're going to just make everything go our way, we're going to add D.C. and Puerto Rico as a state, we're going to get 4 new senators, more electoral votes, and it will be one-party totalitarianism, just like they have in California, Oregon, and Washington, for the foreseeable future, unless the Republicans wake up, see what's happening at the state level, force some federal compliance to ensure we have election integrity, lest the whole country come ripped apart at the seams. And we'll be here to continue to encourage that action. I hope you do the same. Thank you for joining us and subscribing as we do. All right, we got one more update on the day, my friends, and then we'll hear from you. And this one is coming soon. It's almost sentencing time for the backdoor judge. You remember Hannah C. Dugan, the judge out of Wisconsin, who let an illegal alien use her backdoor however he wanted, escaped him out of the courtroom when federal agents were outside to take him into custody. And she did it in violation of her judicial code of conduct, first of all, but also federal law. For that, she was convicted. She spent a lot of time desperately trying to get out of any consequences. The judge rejected her arguments, rescheduled the case for sentencing. And as we know, when a defendant is sentenced, we usually see a couple of documents hit the court. We've got first in this one, her sentencing memorandum from the defendant, Backdoor Doogie. Then we also have the DOJ's recommendation, which will both go in front of the judge, and the judge will then flesh out and hand down the sentence based on what has been read. And so we'll start with Dugan's arguments. She says, we're very upset about this. And as a result of her conviction, this will be very sympathetic to her. So hang on, the DOJ will respond. She's lost her judicial job. She loved it. And that was the culmination of her career spent serving others. And let's not forget, this illegal alien that she let escape had allegedly beaten another person and other family members who were in the courtroom as victims. So she didn't serve the victims in the case. She didn't serve the people of the state of Wisconsin. The prosecutor was there, didn't even know any of this was happening, didn't get an opportunity to object to her allowing him to leave. So she says sentencing need not do worse to her. Don't make it harder. She already lost her job. Have mercy. In fact, to do so would run contrary to the interest of justice. They say Doogie, for 7 decades almost, has been an exemplary member of the community. No criminal record. This offense was isolated and unique. She's not going to do it again. She was handcuffed and shackled, photographed publicly by plan, and intentionally shamed from coast to coast by the leadership of the DOJ and the FBI. Well, she did a shameful thing. She was in a position of power, neglected the victims in the courtroom, bypassed all judicial process, and then obstructed federal agents in the execution of their duties. There is no need for further deterrence. She already knows. And they say, an appropriate sentence, you need to consider these things. What about deterrence? What about the nature and circumstances of her? What about the nature of the crime? Is there restitution and so on? She says she's 67 years old. She's lived a life devoted to family, community, faith, and law. She's Catholic. She has also followed the gospel message of serving others less fortunate unless you were beaten by an illegal alien. She doesn't care. Her professional life has been devoted almost entirely to nonprofits, educational institutions, public service, and more. Here's a list. Look at all this work. Independence First, Jewish Family Services. I thought she was Catholic. Catholic Charities, Wisconsin Judicial Commission, State Bar, Legal Aid, Benedict Bar, blah, blah, blah. Her private practice also was from 2010 to 16, serves veterans, elderly, and people with disabilities, and also walks little old ladies across the dangerous crosswalks. Wow. So her body of work also prompted another person to say she's amazing. And to her, the statement of Christ was also a motivating factor. She assists poor people. So other letters to the court also say she's inspiring, she's modest, she's a selfless contributor, she's got a bunch of decades here, she loves Wisconsinites. Family says she's amazing, 7 siblings. And we don't think any additional punishment is necessary. That would be unfathomable. Now, by any account, the nature of this offense was isolated. ICE showed up, they dramatically changed their policies, and at the time of this change, controversy ensued as every state tried to deal with it. Judges were operating with the understanding that ICE and their enforcement would not take place in the courthouse. Now, the primary concern of those opposing this more aggressive ICE enforcement was just because they didn't want them in their courtrooms. Policies were changing. The disruption to court proceedings were profound. Local attorneys were saying our clients weren't coming up. So on this day, agents showed up and she made a decision. The whole thing lasted under 2 minutes. Other public defenders joined as well. And so they were disputing this enforcement mechanism. The only case similar to this was some other person where another judge was obstructing ICE, but the government dismissed those charges under a deferred prosecution agreement. They came up with a plea deal. She didn't do that. She went to a trial and lost. Also relevant is the fact about how they treated this illegal alien called Eduardo after his arrest. He was charged with the crime. He entered a guilty plea, and his guideline range was 1 to 7 months, and he got time served. So she's saying the illegal alien got very little time, and so you should give me little time as well. The actions of Dugan were not driven by personal or private gain, no personal favor. She never interacted with this guy before the 3-minute court appearance, never spoke to him directly. The government is saying that she failed to acquiesce to the ICE agents, and she said, I'm allowed to do that. I was exercising my state authority, so I was acting under my interpretation of the law. So talking about sentencing disparity, we don't think that she should be punished more aggressively. And so the range should be 0 to 6 months. And so the sentencing guideline range doesn't reference the conduct in this case. And so for these reasons, the proposed range significantly overstates the seriousness of the conduct. And the other effects of this, saying they handcuffed her, they shackled her ankles. Local FBI agents were instructed to photograph her. And then Kash Patel posted a picture. And then the then AG said Dugan was deranged. And so they were really mean to her from the DOJ. And so she will address the court at sentencing. And so in conclusion, this is already a deep price. There's been unnecessary public humiliation of Dugan's arrest. And we think the punishment has already been served. And so in total, what we want is a sentence of time served. Okay, so 0 jail, nothing further. What she's already suffered is good enough. No more penalties, period. All right, so the DOJ says, oh yeah, how about this? Our system of justice is built on a simple but vital promise that the law applies equally to everyone. Citizens enter courtrooms expecting that the rules will be followed and that justice will be administered fairly, and that the person wearing the robe will honor her oath to uphold the Constitution and to faithfully and impartially discharge her duties under the law. But when faced with a situation in which the defendant personally disagreed with the lawful actions of the feds, she abandoned that oath. Rather than uphold the law, she used the power and the prestige of her judicial office to obstruct these federal agents, carrying out their lawful duties in order to help an individual evade arrest. And in doing so, she placed the interests of a criminal defendant above the rights of the victims and used her colleague to facilitate the crime and place law enforcement agents and members of the public in danger by undermining the arrest plan. In fact, resulting in a foot chase, moving traffic outside the courthouse. This was a serious offense, and it warrants a serious sentence. And so on May 13th, the grand jury in this district indicted her, charged her with 1 count of endeavoring to conceal and another count of obstruction. And she went hard. She adopted an aggressive litigation strategy. She said, first of all, I'm a judge. I'm absolutely immune. I can do whatever I want. And I had the legal right to obstruct because of my robe. After the court denied that, the case went to trial. She again proclaimed her innocence. The jury found her guilty. Notwithstanding the verdict, she then continued to say, I did nothing wrong. So now we've got sentencing scheduled for next week. This memorandum will address the standards and try to identify the appropriate sentence and the range. As we saw, you need to consider a bunch of things, and the pre-sentence report has identified some disagreements between us. The Supreme Court has called the guidelines a framework for sentencing. We all start at one location and then move up or down the scale, make it worse, make it less. And so we say that the advisory guidelines range is 15 months to 21 months. She says she should get 0, but we're starting here at 15 to 21. Now, having presided over this matter and listened carefully, you or judge are very familiar with her conduct, which is also described in detail. And so we don't need to fully repeat any of that here. Now, unlike most who appear before this court, she understood exactly what she was doing. She said in this ordeal, I'll do it. I'll get the heat. Court reporter was saying, show them the right door. She said, I'm already in the doghouse with Carl because I tried to help that guy. And that she hadn't even spoken with the chief judge about the events. This was all calculated. She made it with the full understanding that she was in the wrong. Now, the fact that she was not deterred, despite unquestionably knowing that what she was doing crossed the line, aggravates her offense, and so it should be worse. She was entrusted with authority and responsibility that few citizens even possess, and rather than honoring those obligations, she used her position to interfere with the lawful administration of justice. That betrayal magnifies the seriousness of this offense. The harm caused by her conduct cannot be measured solely by these acts. In addition to betraying the trust, her conduct undermined public confidence in courts. The public must know that there are consequences for those who abuse this trust. And so a serious sentence is necessary to reaffirm the foundational principle of our justice system, no one is above the law, particularly judges. Anything less risks sending the opposite message, that personal loyalties and other viewpoints can supersede a legal duty. She chose to help Ruiz Flores. She placed her personal views as well as the interest of a criminal defendant above everyone else. For example, Flores Ruiz was charged with physically assaulting 3 victims. All of the victims were in the courtroom that day. They also had constitutional and statutory rights to participate in these proceedings scheduled before the defendant. And typically when victims are there, cases are called on the record. So everyone knows. In the unusual circumstance that it's not called on the record, victims are notified. But neither of those things occurred. Instead, the victims waited in the courtroom for over an hour for the case to be called and then left. They were upset and confused. They said, we came here and the judge just postponed the hearing. The defendant never bothered to inquire about the victims because she was exclusively focused on escaping the illegal out her door. She also used her colleagues, Judge Cristela Cervera, to unwittingly facilitate this. She disrupted proceedings in her courtroom too, directed her to keep her robe on so she could have the authority of a judge, made a show of force. She went up to the agents. Do you know who I am? Of course, none of this had anything to do with Judge Cervera's docket. Instead, she simply decided that her desire to go confront these agents with a show of force with other judges outweighed any burden or stress that she caused to her colleague. She also then further took advantage of Judge Cervera's kindness and had her take the officers to the chief judge's office, and then Dugan went back into the courtroom and escaped him. Recognizing the devastating nature of this testimony, the defendant also adopted another aggressive trial strategy, unfairly painting Cervera as a liar. And anyone who's observed Cervera's demeanor in court understood that she took her judicial oath very seriously. And so the treatment of the victims and a colleague judge was frankly appalling, and it further aggravates her offense. And so finally, by intentionally thwarting the plans of the arrest team, she put others in danger. What was planned as a low-key, safe arrest involving 6 officers in a public area turned into a foot chase outside the courthouse through moving traffic. The weather conditions and reduced visibility could have resulted to injury to the illegal, the agents, the drivers of the vehicle, and none of this would have happened but for her interference with law enforcement officers who were merely attempting to do their duty in a peaceful and safe manner. Now, while endangering others may have not been her intent, that outcome was reasonably foreseeable to her as a circuit judge presiding over criminal cases. And so taken together, all of this means she needs a meaningful sentence. And by the way, this is not a case involving a momentary lapse in judgment. She continued to characterize her conduct, which a jury found criminal beyond a reasonable doubt. She said it was appropriate, it was justified, it was legally permissible. And to be clear, the government doesn't seek punishment for her exercise of her constitutional right to trial. She can have a trial, but the court simply should consider her continued minimization of this conduct and her persistent refusal to acknowledge wrongdoing until now. Now her refusal to acknowledge the wrongfulness of her conduct raises legitimate concerns about her respect for the law and suggests a continuing belief in her personal disagreement that you can obstruct federal agents. That mindset does not reflect well on her and heightens the need for a sentence to promote respect for the law and to restore confidence to hold this system itself accountable. Public officials must understand that they cannot substitute personal viewpoints for their legal duty. And unlike many other defendants who appear before this court, she has led a privileged life. She grew up in a stable, financially sound household. She enjoyed the support and love of her large family. Large, I think, in number, but maybe also just large. She was not exposed to drug or alcohol abuse or violence. Although she lost her mother to cancer young, she remains exceptionally close to her 7 siblings. She was the beneficiary of an outstanding education, having obtained multiple advanced degrees. She's been steadily employed since '87, served as a member on numerous boards and organizations. And so her background suggests that she had no reason to involve herself in criminally obstructive conduct. As a lawyer and a judge, she had a far better understanding than the average defendant of what this means. And as an elected official, she also agreed to be held to a higher standard of ethical conduct. Wisconsin's judicial code made clear she could not allow her personal beliefs to interfere with her professional obligations. As an educated and civic-minded citizen, she was fully aware of the avenues available to legally express her personal political views, but unlike other defendants who were driven to criminality due to addiction, poverty, mental illness, or more, she knew what was going on and made the decision. And as she has made clear in her pleadings, she insists there was virtually no limitation on her use of the robe and her position in how she acted, even in the purpose of thwarting ICE. And so, evaluated through this framework, her personal characteristics and her history does not mitigate her conduct. Although she has lived an otherwise law-abiding life, her belief that her motives place her above the law is a dangerous outlook. And so we don't want sentencing disparities either. We want people to get similar sentences. And many of these low sentences involve people who actually accept responsibility and plead guilty. She didn't do that. If you go to trial, the average sentence at that trial, call it the trial tax, 16 months in prison, or the median at 10 months. And so the U.S. acknowledges that she did experience collateral consequences. Yeah, she lost her judgeship, but those consequences are appropriately considered, but they don't outweigh the seriousness of her offense. She was entrusted with exceptional authority and public confidence, and it was precisely that position of trust that enabled her offense. The court's sentence should not only reflect the personal consequence that the defendant to her, but also the broader institutional harm that causes harm when judges obstruct justice. Now, as we know, judges are entrusted with tremendous discretion, but there's a line that they cannot cross. They may disagree with the law, question policy, sympathize with those who appear before them, but they cannot use the power of judicial office to obstruct federal law enforcement officers to help someone evade arrest. The defendant, Dugan, crossed that line. That, combined with her lack of remorse and sense of accountability, merits a sentence that reflects the serious nature of her conduct and its broader impact on the justice system. Signed by Richard Froling for the Criminal Division at the DOJ. So if you take all of this into account at trial, they're thinking probably something closer to this range, 10 to 16. Dugan is saying 0. Time served is good enough. And ultimately, we'll see what the judge hands down. The sentencing is scheduled for next week, Wednesday, July 8th at 11:15, where the backdoor judge will learn her fate, and we'll be here to see what it is. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, friends, it has been a lovely stream. Thank you for joining us on the day. I want to now hear from you if you just got here. Quick recap on what we talked about. We had some good updates on the birth tourism stuff. We know the DOJ is accelerating and prioritizing their prosecutions of any of the fraudulent birth tourism schemes. We also saw that we had more updates around the board. In Texas, they're calling for a special session. We've got Homeland Security saying that they're now unleashing 10,000 arrests over the last 5 days. Numbers are growing and growing and growing. Some action on the TPS cancellations. They are extending some of the work orders until July 10th, so that's not long from now, so that the lower courts can incorporate the Supreme Court decision and get out of the way, lift all their stays, and allow the TPS cancellations to continue forward. We also saw this lawsuit brought by Ken Paxton against these Chinese nationals who were conducting birth tourism centers in Texas, all over the place in Texas. Many babies being born after being facilitated in by these criminals and at least fraudsters, according to Texas. Talked about all of that. We heard the DOJ was here. We had a couple of senators who were talking big about this, along with Chip Roy and Tim Walz pardoning a child rapist because, of course, it's Tim Walz. What else would you expect? Then we talked about the DOJ appeals. 2 big election orders have now been appealed. The 2 big ones that took out the Trump EO ultimately now going up. Sparky just had her case accelerated up to DC. She was attacking the list. We had Indira Talwani, the Obama judge. She was limiting the Postal Service, both those going up on appeal. We're excited about those. We also saw in Arizona, doing the math, you can extrapolate from this one check against the SAVE database. Out of 61,000 voters, 400 were on it who were illegal. Half of those had voted. So 200 out of 61,000. Do the math on that. That's about 14,000 total people extrapolated out who voted. That was dispositive in the Arizona election in 2020. The number was smaller than that. So that one little impingement alone on the integrity of the election could have been sufficient to change the outcome. And we went through, learned a lot more about the AVID system in Arizona and how this was a piece of software that was basically cobbled together, didn't even work. And all of that was confirmed by this other organization called the Election Innovation and Research Center that did a case study and lessons about what happened, confirming that they couldn't even audit the systems, reconcile the systems, and the mistakes actually turned up. And this could have resulted in duplicate ballots going out everywhere. Meanwhile, Kash Patel is now encouraging and ordering a priority effort to investigate the 2020 election probe coming out of Georgia. We saw some action that was submitted in there in the Brad Raffensperger case, and once again heard from others, including the vice president on the SAVE Act. All of that before we learned about Backdoor Dugan. She wants time served in her sentence. The DOJ's probably asking for about 10 to 16. She'll be sentenced next week, and we'll see what the penalty is soon. But now, my friends, it is time to hear from you. And if you're a Membo, stick around and we'll have an after party today because we definitely missed you yesterday. So hang tight and we'll see what else you guys are seeing out there. But I saw a couple of donos come in and some super chats. And friends, thank you for sending these in on the day. What a beautiful day it is. And we hope that your America birthday week is going just beautifully well. What a beautiful day. Oh, it's Sparkle paper towels. Wow. Sparkle Suknanon's got her own brand of paper towels. They don't really work. They don't mop up anything. You're like, oh, here, I'm going to use this paper towel to like mop up all of this fraud that is spilled all over America. Doesn't work at all. It's like a piece of plastic. Zero absorption capabilities. Thanks for nothing, Sparkle. Throw them in the trash. They don't make anything sparkle. They make everything more fraudulent. Can't clean up anything. What a disaster. Don't buy them. Voice of the people, what's up? Hey, man. This is not good. Voice of the people, prayers up for Rick D. Got news, his roommate found him unconscious. From what I understand, he may have had a stroke. We'll get more info ASAP. All right, so thank you, Voice, for that. We're going to pray for Rick, man. Heavenly Father, please watch over our friend Rick D. He's a good man who has been here with our community for a long time. We don't know exactly what happened, but we want to send your loving and your healing energy into his household, into his being, so that we can hear from him as soon as possible and have him return back healthy and ready to be here back with this amazing community of which he has been a part for so long and of which he loves. Voice, thank you for the update. I'll send him a message as soon as we're done here. But I hope he's okay. That's terrible news. Sev Russ, what's going on? Ray Hedrick, what's up? Hey, Sev Russ, bringing in 5 new membos. Thank you, Sev Russ, for that. And in Jesus' name we pray. Sorry, I forgot to end the prayer. Ray Hedrick, thank you for, hey, welcome aboard as a new membo. Bill Huff is here. I'm just processing that. Cheese dip McCracker. Man, loved cheese dipped crackers. Welcome aboard. Ashley Stars here. What's going on? Mini Farmer, Texas in the house. Tina, what's up? Good to see you. Sev Russ, the 55-mile man in the house, bringing in 5 new membos. Thank you, Sev Russ. And members, stick around. We're going to hang tight. We're going to hang tight and have a little after party today. Jeffrey Adams, Rob, vacation someday down on Panama City Beach and watch the F-35s and the F-22s fly down the beach on the deck. It's incredible. It is incredible. If you've never seen a fighter jet fly over your head, it's a wild experience. And I can't even imagine what it would be like to be an enemy of America. Like you're over there in the Middle East. You're like, oh, going to go fight the infidel. And you have one of these F-35s flying over your head. You're like, it's game over. I'm just going to go back to something else. It's like an alien craft or something, especially when they're low. And so we went when Trump spoke, we went down to the National Mall when he was there like last Thursday. And we got to hear him speak, but while we were walking, we saw fighter jets, like heard fighter jets and saw them. So it's like, crack, you're like, whoa, man, crazy. And then we saw, there was one photo of the B-2 stealth bomber flying with the jets. You couldn't distinguish between the two. But then there were the B-2 jets that just flew over, like the B-2 bomber flew over by itself. And it was like eerie. It was like Batman, like, kind of soaring through. Like Alexis and I like looked at each other, jaws just dropped, like, oh. And we were in the right spot, like perfect timing. It flew like right over us. And you can hardly even hear it. It's surreal. It's like this floating winged beauty of death. It's pretty epic. So shout out. Thank you, Jeffrey Adams. And on July 4th here in DC, apparently they're doing flyovers for like 8 hours. So I'm super excited. Hey, Phil Beard, look at these donos, Phil. My goodness. Man, Phil, very generous of you. Thank you for sending these in. I don't even know what to say. Phil sent these two in, and man, Phil, God bless America, land that I love. Thank you, counselor, for your wisdom. Man, thank you, Phil. Thank you for being a membo and for being here for so long and for the big fat dono supporting our work. Man, super cool of you to do that. We're grateful for it. I really appreciate our time together. And Phil, I hope that you're having a beautiful July 4th week. We love America. God bless our country. It is a land that I love. That's why we get so fired up here about this stuff, Get so animated. Because we don't want it to be destroyed by people who hate it. And it won't be. Dang it, we're going to continue to work together. Phil, thank you for making what we do here possible and being a membo and for your ginormous contributions today. You're an awesome dude. Thank you. And you got a beautiful puppy in your picture. So thank you so much, Phil. We really appreciate that, man. Thank you much. I don't even know what to say, but I love you. Thank you. Mock Schnell. Hey, what's up, Mock Schnell, baby? Bringing in 20 new membos. New membos, hang tight. 1-800-I'm-awake in the house. Rebel Elite. What's up, Rekin? We got MD Crandall's joining up. We got Mont 5TA, Mike's 8900, Josh Allen fan, welcome. Sean Collins, OFUX, welcome. Marmar, what's up? Lisa P. We got DT Skates DD in the house. Lizzie may be dizzy. What's going on? Jonesy. We got Audrey, David Sukot. We got Kitten Lang, Survivor, TC113, and Warren Harshaw. All gifted membos, courtesy of Mock Schnell in the house. Great to see you, Mock Schnell. Thank you for bringing in 20 new membo friends. Membo, stick around after party time. Hey, what's going on? Triggered Harambe. Man, rest in peace, Harambe. We got Rob. I've been complaining about this for 2 years now. Where are the lawsuits against the sanctuary cities? I feel like the DOJ doesn't care. Yeah, we really haven't seen much action against the sanctuary cities. There's been like some threats. I think Mullen said that he was going to stop the international airports. Like, okay, we'll just take customs and border out of your airport. So nobody can come in. And, good idea. But I think that there really should be penalties for the sanctuary cities. Just cut off the money. Just cut off the money. If you guys want to pay for healthcare for illegal aliens, you can pay for it. I mean, I really think that's, not good to do that to your own constituency, your own people. But if they want to pay for it, you're okay, go for it. You want to pay for free housing. You want to give them SNAP benefits, pay for their food. You want to do all the, schooling, all the things. Comes out of your pocket, but you're not getting a federal dime from us until you actually fall back into compliance. Otherwise, we're not paying for your bad addiction. You've got an addiction. It's bad for you. You're kicked out of the house until you stop doing crack, which is illegal aliens. So Gunface, hey, since Haitians can be deported per SCOTUS, why don't you denaturalize ACB's adopted kids and send them back? Woof, Gunface. It's pretty savage. Do you think they lied on their naturalization form? I try not to get too personal with the judges. I do. I really do. But, it's hard not to notice things like that. Thank you, Gunface. Very aggressive. Very aggressive. Got to process that one. Thank you, Gunface. Diana Pearson, what's happening? Hey, welcome aboard, Diana Pearson. New Memo in the house, man. We love our Membos. We'll see you in a little bit for the after party. Hey, Jeffrey Adams, didn't Trump approve like 600,000 visas for China? I think so. I think so. I think he did. I think he did. Yeah, I said something about like, you know, we want to bring them over here for school, or like our universities, like our communist universities will not have any money if we don't let the communist Chinese go there and get educated in America. Jeffrey Adams, good to see you, man. Thank you for the dono. I know, I think he did. Holly, another silly question. There's no silly questions here, Holly. Says, SCOTUS, how are rulings made? All together and then debate or independent rule, and then once a decision, they concur or dissent? Also, the word on the street, the NPR story, retirement story, was a ploy to catch a leak. Yeah, so Alito, right, there was a report that Alito was going to retire by some journalist, and nobody knows why she published that. Then she said it was a mistake, but then people think, well, maybe she got, you know, inside information from somebody, a source inside SCOTUS, that then said that he is going to retire. And so it might have been a mole smokeout operation, something like that. Could be pretty wild if that's true. But as to SCOTUS, yeah, I think they basically start to form a consensus, right? They start to, and I don't know like explicitly how it happens. I'm sure it's different in a lot of cases, but I envision that people start to, first of all, they have conferences, right? So they meet and they have conferences. Cases come back up. Do we want to accept this for a petition, for a writ? Do we want to deny it? So they have regular meetings. And then I would imagine, the Chief Justice is probably kind of gauging the room. Where are people going to fall? There's also a calendar and kind of a schedule. So certain decisions need to go out to certain people. So the writing of the majority is going to be assigned to somebody. But you got to know where those people are before you assign it, who's going to be in the majority. And I would also guess, like I could predict, like on the transgender stuff, like those were 6-3. It's like, okay, as soon as that case comes in and it's accepted, you're like, all right. So you know who's going to be in the majority, you know who's not going to be in the majority. But I would also then bet, like on the birthright case, that there was some negotiations, right? Like there's almost like a consensus building process where Roberts is working to bring people to his side. And I think you might have seen the same thing happen when they threw Trump off the ballot. Like, I think Roberts wanted that to be 9-0, like unanimous. And so I think there was one person in the dissent. So like that person's opinion becomes known and he goes and says, hey, like, here's why I think your arguments are bad. Here's why we need you to come join the majority. And then that happens. So there's consensus building that goes on. And, exactly how that happens, I think, the Supreme Court's kind of a mystery. Like, they're not subject to FOIA. We really don't know kind of what goes on in there behind closed doors. But I would imagine there are conversations, there's conferences, there's consensus building. And so what I would think is that, like in the birthright case, that Roberts was probably, pumping up Amy and Kavanaugh to come join him in the majority. Kavanaugh maybe... we'll say, I'll come join you. Like, I won't be in the dissent. I'll come join you in the majority, but I'm not going to go full constitutional underpinning. I'm going to just decide on the statutory basis. You guys can go all the way and join the leftists on constitutional underpinnings. And then Amy was probably, somewhere in the middle there as well. But Roberts, I would imagine, as the Chief Justice, was trying to build as big a consensus as possible and is trying to pull people into the majority, which, he barely got it through. I mean, really, he barely got that through. Like, if Amy would have, all we needed was Amy to go in with Kavanaugh. Like, that's it. And then you could make the argument that it's actually a 5-4 against the constitutional basis, and that you could just modify it with a simple statute. So, like, I would imagine on that issue, Roberts is like really pulling somebody, because I think that Roberts probably had an outcome that he wanted in mind and then drove it home. And again, it's probably another credibility argument. Like, Roberts is trying to uphold the institution of the Supreme Court, even if it wrecks the country, because he doesn't want to alienate a very, angry 50 million people, strong population who will probably get a benefit from this holding. Whereas everybody else on the other side, the American citizens, or the heritage Americans, are, mostly used to the status quo. So he holds the status quo as to not create a very angry, kind of subset. And in doing so, starts to carve out the end of the country. But that's just kind of who Roberts is. He's like an institutionalist. So I would imagine he probably knew, he's like, I'm definitely not going to get Alito. I'm definitely not going to get Clarence Thomas. So it's probably, and I was kind of surprised about Gorsuch. Like Gorsuch, I thought maybe would go that way, like in a 7-2, but he was probably pulling him into his majority and trying to get the outcome that he wanted. And I think he probably did the same thing with Obamacare, right? I was like, I think 5-4 on that one too. So he's trying to, steer the court, which is a bummer that it turned out this way. But anyways, good question, Holly. I think it's probably different in every case. Some are probably very clear. It's like, okay, the 3 leftists are going over there, all 6 conservatives going over here. Like pick a Second Amendment case. Probably not a lot necessary. Just they're there, we're here. Okay, we're in the majority. What's the calendar? Who needs an opinion? Who wants it? Oh, Alito, you want it? Okay. But in other ones, I'm sure there's consensus building. Jay Piers, do you think that the SCOTUS ruling in Barbara should be construed as a pretext to bypass the rigorous state ratification process for bypassing constitutional amendments describing in Article 5? How would you bypass it? You mean like with a convention of the states? Yeah, my only concern about like a convention. So, we have a process, right, to amend the Constitution. You need 2/3 of both houses. You need 3/4 of all the states. I don't think we're going to get that to amend the 14th. I just don't. There's really too many people who would benefit from the current system to change it. So what's the alternative? A convention of the states. You get the states together and the states create a convention. From that convention, you could emerge with a whole new constitution. That makes me nervous because we have a lot of people who hate huge swaths of the Constitution. And what comes out of it? Like it could be dramatically worse if you have a convention of the states. Like you go to the convention, you don't come out with the same Constitution plus a benefit on the 14th Amendment. You come out with a whole new Constitution. And in the Constitution, then you say, well, free speech except hate speech. Or Second Amendment, rights, right to bear arms except for semi-automatics, only bolt action rifles. Or, certain searches are necessary. You have the right against unreasonable searches and seizures and the right to privacy except for FISA or something. Or, transgenders are now covered by equal protection. Like it could get dramatically worse is my point. So I don't know. I think honestly, eventually we'll come back on the 14th Amendment. It was pretty close. The holding was 6-3, but the constitutional basis was 5-4. So just like other things, we might come back 10 to 15 years. People will realize, what have we done? Like, this is a disaster. The country's fracturing apart. Maybe it'll be too late at that moment, but you might get a change in the constitution of the Supreme Court, or Congress passes something, and then you now measure that against what they decided in Barbara. So it's, it might just be a long haul to get there. But we're not giving up. The country's not over yet. We got a beautiful country. We're going to fight for it. So we're going to stay positive about it. And the silver lining is always, it wakes a lot of people up. It really wakes people up to say, dang, we got some real problems with how this is unfolding across the country. And I think a lot of people are realizing that right now. Hey, Facts X Fiction. Hey, thanks for all you do, Rob. Where can I find your past and current marked up docs that are on Substack, in particular, the huge Mike Lindell doc? Did we get that on Substack? So I can just tell you where to go for that one. Just go to electioncrimebureau.com. We do write these little summaries and post them over on Substack. That's kind of like a recap of the show with links, but I'm not sure if that particular link made it in. But it's a very easy website, electioncrimebureau.com. Type that into the Googles and then it'll come right up. So check that whole website out. So that's over there. Thank you, FAQ. We appreciate that. Doan, This is what fundamental transformation and the Build Back Better scorched earth strategy looks like within the judicial branch. Yeah, and Congress is so weak, like they've delegated a lot of their power over to the executive, and that just backfired on them bigly. And the executive, if you look at the Constitution, really has no checks on the judiciary, like almost none. They get appointment power, but that's it. They could prosecute you if you commit a crime, but they never do. So the real check on the judiciary is Congress. Congress is so weak that they've basically neutered themselves and delegated everything out over to these independent agencies. They will not check the courts. So the courts, like this is the whole system. You have to check the other branches. Otherwise, it's just human nature, right? Madison talked about this, I think in 51. You have to pit ambition against ambition. One branch is going to emerge to seize as much power as they can. Other branches should have the equivalent mindset, the equivalent method of operating, and then you pit the ambition against the other ambition. Congress has no ambition. They're completely neutered, completely emasculated across the board. And so what do? Is they just say, well, we don't want to make any hard decisions. We just want to re-elect ourselves. And if we have to make a hard decision and do something that's unpopular, we won't get reelected. So let's make an independent body do it. Let's just delegate it all out. Meaning they really have no ambition. They've just kind of turned into limp noodles. And they should be pushing back on the judiciary on behalf of the executive, but they're not. So that just means the judiciary just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And they are usurping powers of the executive branch. Everywhere we look, there's some judge somewhere saying Trump can't do that. So, yeah, it's not good. We need Congress to step up or get out. Like, get out of the way, let other people come in there. Hey, Lynn loves nature. If birth tourism parents have been found to have committed fraud to enter the USA, can the child's citizenship be revoked? I mean, I don't think if they're natural born, like essentially what the Supreme Court said is they're natural born. If you're physically here and a baby comes out, unless you're a diplomat, which another good idea was to just label all foreigners diplomats. You're all officially diplomats now. All illegal aliens are diplomats. Therefore, no babies, no birthright babies. You're all diplomats and ambassadors from your home countries. Therefore, no babies. But I don't think so. I mean, even if you're here illegally, like you can be an illegal alien. So like a fraudulent entry on a fraudulent visa, there was no exception for that. That counts. You can be in the country illegally. You can have been deported and come back in the country 5 times illegally. Your baby counts. So a fraudulent visa, that's a crime of the parents, but not a crime of the child, which gets everything. Mock Schnell, hey, Cy, Rob, on mail ballots, as everyone knows, my mom passed away back in March. We remember that, Mock Schnell. I hope you're doing well. I was checking mom's cell phone last weekend, and it had a response from the San Mateo County that they had received her ballot. That's wild, Mock Schnell. Man, you should report that or send me the details on that. So your dead mother voted? Did she vote? Was it a late ballot? That's wild, dude. Yeah, that's wild. You should send that to me or send that to the DOJ. The Savage, thank you for the heads up on that, Mock Schnell. Wild. I've had that. I've had a dead guy's ballot come into my house multiple times, multiple elections. The Savage, Dugan, trying to get a lower sentence is BS. Everyone knows the one legal principle. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. And she knew what she was breaking, the law. Justice is supposed to be blind. Exactly right. Yeah, and she was very aggressive this whole time. I didn't do anything wrong. I was justified. I'm a judge. I'm allowed to do it. There's nothing you can do to me. Now it's like, I've already been punished enough. No, jail, prison. Great Eagle 1, Paid to Shop Canada website coming to USA soon. Nice. It would be nice to get paid to shop, wouldn't it? Can you make more money? Is it like an infinite money glitch? Joe, there is always a way out. The only question is who has the balls to do it? That's true. Never despair. Spain was conquered for 700 years before the Reconquista. Yeah, we're not giving up our country. We're not like taking our ball and going home. We lost this one, so I guess it's game over. We're going to go cry somewhere. No. we're going to continue to fight for this country, 100%. I'm even more fired up than ever. Joe, be strong and do not be afraid. We have God on our side, and we are fighting for our children's children. It's only treason if you lose, so do not lose. Exactly right. We have nowhere else to go. All right. It's like, you hear the story coming up between the British and the early colonists in early America during the Revolutionary War. It's like some people had a will to fight. They would say, your history on the Revolutionary War, like, why did one side win versus the other? There's always an analysis. Well, they had, to have big supply chains from overseas and bus everybody over, ship everybody over. There was a population, numbering. There was a familiarity with the land. There was, new tactics in warfare. And, a lot of things changed that were important in the revolutionary victory. But a big thing that they say a lot is just the energy, like the willpower. This was a fight for liberty, literally. And that was like the word of the day, liberty. We fight for liberty. We fight for freedom. The British didn't have that. They were just fighting because their king sent them over here. And they had a place to go back home to. They had a place to return to. But the Americans didn't. Like, this was it. It was do or die, all or nothing. So that's how I feel about America. Like, there's nowhere else to go. Where are we going to go? These foreigners who wave their foreign flags, they have their home countries. They have their home lands. Ilhan can go back to Somalia. Kilmar can go back to Guatemala. We got America. That's it. We're not going to lose it. It's just that simple. I'd rather die than have that happen. So, and maybe we will. Maybe we will. Maybe something, I hope not. But Charlie did. Many others have. So it's the fight of our lives. We're happy to be here in good company. Thank you for joining us. We got some work to do. No doubts about that. But it's our country. So we're not letting it go easily. I'll tell you that at all, period. So what's up, friends? We got some other locals comments, my friends. And then if you're a Memo, hang tight. We're going to have some fun. This is a funny comment. Hey, tell Alexis to keep her ID handy so ICE doesn't target her in her current condition because she's pregnant. So like ICE is just looking around for anybody who's pregnant. It's like, are you an illegal alien? She's not. She's an American citizen, born and raised. And she's as American as they come, baby. So thank you, rub some dirt on it. But it's a funny comment. Like all pregnant women, maybe we just should deport. The default is we just send you overseas because of the Supreme Court. Hilarious, rub some dirt on it. Chat with me. We've moved from an agrarian society to a technological society. And for some reason, cell phones and computers don't seem near as aggressive as pitchfork and tar and feathers. They're not. Yeah, they're not. Yeah, they're not. And a lot of people are just kind of, many Americans, I'd say, are just kind of neutered. They've had the fight beaten out of them with COVID and with generational propaganda to say you're kind of weak and ineffective and you're a bad person for having any thoughts that the government doesn't program into your brain. We saw it during COVID. Chat with me. Must have blood pregnancy test on entry. Men and women do not as sexist. So, well, I think part of the problem is like even that Chinese company was saying, we'll just bring you in, get pregnant here. Just come get pregnant here. No problem. And then you can have your baby. There was another judge, Woodchip Bill says there was another judge squashing the post office rule. Yeah, I think, there's like a multi-vector attack on that EO. Who was this judge? Another judge, Emmett Sullivan, ruled yesterday that the USPS rule was blocked on behalf of the NAACP, of course. Thank you for that flag, Woodchip Bill. Yeah, and Spuds, Gina from Third Railify is in contact with Rick's roommate. He said, Rick, I don't want to spread Rick's, health condition all over the place, but thank you, Spuds. That's not really for me to share, but we're sending him prayers. Like whatever the details are, we're praying for Rick. Rick's a good man. I've spoken to him, and he's a good man. He really helps a lot of people, so we hope he's well. He prays for a lot of people, helps a lot of people. Now we can send some love to him. He is awake. Okay, amazing. So thank you, Spuds. So he's okay. All right. So thank you, Spuds. And thank you to everybody who's in touch with him. Like, that's amazing. We have an amazing community. People connect. People know each other. You guys are awesome. So we love you. Thank you for doing that. Thanks for checking on him, and thanks for sharing that with all of us. All right. And so, friends, we'll pause here for the day. Tomorrow, we may also do just one stream because we got all these, July 4th activities going on. And so we'll be back tomorrow. Might be around the same time or a little earlier or a little later. Got to check to see what's on the docket exactly. But we will be here tomorrow. That's Friday tomorrow. We're also planning on a July 4th stream. So if you're here on July 4th, come say what's up. We're going to party and celebrate America. I've got some American collared shirts, an American collared shirt that your boy's going to wear. I'm super excited about it. So Neuro D, thanks for sharing this one. Join us on Locals. If you want to join as a member, watchingthewatchers.locals.com is a good place to go. You can also join us on YouTube and just click that join as a member button, and then it will magically transfer you to our members only after party coming up as soon as the song ends. And it's going to be good to hang out and see and debrief. We've got some other comments. See what else you guys have to say about this. What an amazing thing. All right. So also, Dan, the Norplant implant is a long-acting reversible contraceptive that prevents pregnancy for up to 5 years. So all visa holders who come in, you get that? And Rubos are saying prayers up for Rick. Let me see what's going on over here. Yes, amazing. All right, so the Rubos are much better prayers than I am. So let me read this one from the Rubos with our Heavenly Father healing. Saying, I now apply the blood of Jesus in, over, and through, baptize with the Holy Spirit and fire, anoint with the breaker anointing, release the rivers of living waters into, and bless and favor with more blessings and favor than there are stars in the heavens and sand on the seashore, upon Rick's life. His mind, body, heart, soul, spirit, lungs, and every inch of Rick's brain, his frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and temporal lobe. And now Rick receives the cleansing, purifying, healing, clearing, shielding, protecting, redeeming, saving power of the blood and Rick's life. His mind, body, heart, soul, spirit, lungs, and every inch of Rick's brain, frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and the temporal lobe are healed and made whole by the blood of Jesus, the baptism of the Holy Spirit in fire, the breaker anointing, the rivers of living waters, and the multiplication of blessings and favor more numerous than the stars in heaven and the sands on the seashore. And Rick receives it now. Amen. From the Rubos. Man, good prayer, man. Whew. Some good stuff. So thank you, Rubos, for sharing that one. We're going to send that through the heavens down into Rick, and we appreciate that. Thanks for taking the time to write that out for us and for Rick. All right, so friends, we'll pause. We'll come back tomorrow. We'll get into it again. Until we're back here, I hope that the rest of your evening is beautiful and outstanding. You're doing something fun, getting ready to celebrate America harder than you ever have in your entire life. We'll come back tomorrow. We'll have some updates. We'll see what the day has in store. And then, of course, we'll come back and celebrate on July 4th as well. So thanks for subscribing. Thanks for sticking around. If you're a membo, hang tight. We'll come back as soon as the song ends. Locals, hang tight. YouTube friends, it should auto-magically transfer you. And we'll see you back there in a minute. But if you're not joining us for that, I hope you're coming back tomorrow because we will be getting into it again. And in order to do that appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together. Oh, and thank you to our amazing mods and memesmiths. Big thank yous to K-Bean, Carrie B. We got Neuro D, Janik, Dog Digger, Muffin Rando, John, Geegum Geegum, Elliot, Just Rhonda, Neuro D, and Muffin Rando and Donut Mind Me, all in the house. Thanks for modding the fort down for us. And now, my friends, we'll need to see you back here tomorrow to get into this again, because in order to do that appropriately, we need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night. Sleep very well. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. We brought the heat with every chatting line. Together we exposed corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers. Truth on our side. Watching the watchers. We won't be denied. Watching the watchers. Eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care.